Your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes & Co.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Labour has won the Chester by-election in the first public vote since Boris Johnson and Liz Truss left number 10.
Good morning. It's 6 o'clock on Friday, the 2nd of December. This is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Anne. These are your top stories this morning.
Labour has won the Chester by-election, delivering a major blow to Rishi Sunak in his first electoral test as Prime Minister. The winner, Councillor Samantha Dixon, retained the seat for Labour, said it sent a clear message to the government.
From your opinion on the Prime Minister to who you would vote for in the next general election, we'll reveal the latest results from the GB News People's Poll.
And as Meghan and Harry released the trailer for their much-anticipated Netflix documentary, We're in Boston, as William and Catherine visit locals and attempt to put the recent race storm behind them.
And it's not just one documentary, it's a series of 6.
Hooray!
It's a 6-parter, can you believe? God. Anyway, what do you think? Because, as ever, you can join in any of our discussions by emailing gbviews@gbnews.uk. There's lots to talk about this morning.
Oh.
It really is. Politics and royals, and you wait for it. Ever such a lot to talk about.
If you haven't seen that, if you haven't seen that trailer for Harry and Meghan yet, you just wait.
Yeah, we'll show you.
Dear me. Anyway, look, on to the serious stuff to begin with. Labour's won the City of Chester by-election. Councillor Samantha Dixon retained the seat for the party and described Chester as a bellwether constituency.
And it's going to come as a blow for Rishi Sunak in his first electoral test since becoming Prime Minister. Well, joining us now is our North West of England reporter, Sophie Reaper. Hello there, Sophie. And of course, it's not just the fact that this seat has been retained by Labour, it's the massive majority they've now gained there.
Yes, a very good morning to you both. Well, as you say, yesterday the people of Chester took to the polls in this by-election. Now, of course, the reason for this by-election, we should say, is because former Labour MP Christian Matheson was forced to step down after allegations of serious sexual misconduct. So Labour will be pleased that they've managed to retain this seat. But now, this doesn't necessarily come as a surprise that they've managed to retain the seat. But like you say, Anne, it's the majority that they had. I think it was... She took, Sam Dixon, over 17,000 votes, which represents around 61% of the share. She took almost 11,000 votes more than the Conservative candidate did. Now, as I say, this doesn't really come as a surprise. I was here in the constituency yesterday speaking to some of the voters, and the majority, I must say, did tell me they were going to vote for Labour. But I think what was most important to them wasn't necessarily who got on either side, either party. It was what they can now do for the people of Chester. I asked a few of the people in Chester what they wanted, and this is what they had to tell me.
I'd like to see the town a lot cleaner than it is, and also there are too many empty shops and they need to be filled.
Immigration.
What about immigration?
I don't want any more coming into this country.
And why not?
Because we can't afford to feed our own, never mind the immigrants.
To improve the environment, to unfortunately reduce the dependency on motor cars.
They've got to ensure that rents and rates are right for the town, because it's a leisure and commercial centre. So those have got to be sorted out so that the shops are filled. There are too many voids in this town.
Well, there's so much that needs doing, but I don't think they'll bother doing it because one party's the same as the other. We're not being levelled up here at all. It's just words levelling up. They don't carry out what they say they're going to do. They just talk the talk, they don't walk the walk.
Well, as we've just heard, there's plenty for the new MP for Chester to be getting on with, Sam Dixon. But I'm sure she'll just be pleased, and the rest of the Labour Party will be pleased, that after the issues they had with the previous MP, that they've managed to retain this crucial seat here in Chester.
OK. Sophie, thanks very much indeed.
Do let us know what you think of that, because yes, it is a by-election at a particularly vulnerable time for the government, you could argue. Do you see it as a bellwether sign, though? Is it a sign of how things are going to go?
I think it's very odd that the new MP, Sam Dixon, has called it a bellwether seat, because it went to Labour in 2019. So it was the opposite of a bellwether seat.
But I think anything you could say is a bellwether seat at the moment, because as these things happen, if there are any more by-elections due, it'll tell us more and more the mood of the people, and people did have very strong views there. And maybe you agree with them as well.
But on a whole range of
things,
issues.
Yes, sort of traditionally more Labour-type, socialist-type thoughts, but also particularly immigration. And I think that is causing more and more concern now, isn't it, in everybody's mind, especially as we ponder the winter ahead, and the fact that there are people sleeping on the streets, whilst apparently we are putting up a lot of immigrants in posh hotels. Yeah. It does seem extraordinary.
Doesn't it? Keep your thoughts coming through on all of that. GBviews at gbnews.uk. But it's time now for the People's Poll. So let's have a look at what you've been saying this week. And on Rishi Sunak, 43% of people in the poll hold an unfavourable view of the Prime Minister.
And when asked who you would vote for in the next general election, 46% of people in this poll say they would vote for Labour. Only 21% saying they'd vote for the Tories.
When asked whether they will vote in the next general election, 54% are certain to vote. 12% say they certainly won't.
And what does that mean? Does that mean 12% of people are just fed up with politicians in general?
Well, maybe so, but I do think if you can't be bothered to vote, then you've got no room to moan, have you, really?
Or perhaps, though, if you feel that voting doesn't do any good, never seems to, work for you.
Well, it's difficult, isn't it? It's interesting on Rishi Sunak. A very favourable view, 5%, somewhat favourable, 21%. Somewhat unfavourable, 19%, very unfavourable, 24%. 21% don't know.
Well, we don't know, do we, I think? He hasn't had long enough to be able to prove himself, one way or the other.
And yet, if they'd taken a similar poll during the middle of lockdown, when it was dine out on Rishi and furlough and all the rest of it...
Rishi.
I bet he would have done very well. But what do you expect him to do as Prime Minister? That's the sort of issue, I think. But also, the headline there is, who would you vote for in the general election? Labour 46, Conservatives 21. That's a 25-point difference. It's a big difference. Lib Dems 7%, SNP 5%.
Nobody else adds up to much, though, do they?
Well, Lib Dem... there's been talk of a Lib Dem resurgence in the next election, potentially, but, it's not coming through on this, is it?
They're not doing very much either. Maybe they are in the grassroots, and that's where they believe is their strength. But you hardly ever hear a Lib Dem spokesman on anything at the moment. You don't see much of the leader. Maybe they're very quietly working at the grassroots. That's always what they've been good at traditionally. But is it enough to make a dent?
It's very difficult, isn't it, I think, for the Lib Dems at the moment. So Ed Davey, the leader, if you need reminding, you just never hear from him. We did have him on the programme once. It's the first time I've spoken to him in
But have you seen him on anything else recently?
No.
I haven't seen him around at all.
Also, a view of immigration in the country. It's too high, says 54%. About right, says 13%. Too low, 4%. It's difficult to see how you can say it's too low, to be fair, when the way we're struggling.
That's an odd one.
It is not, but it's interesting, isn't it? Because I suppose your view might be skewed by, well, is immigration too high or too low, or are we just not managing it well?
Exactly. It's what sort of immigration, isn't it? And that divides people too. And then, of course, we also asked people about royals. Which royals are most favoured abroad? It's an interesting question to ask at the moment while the Prince and Princess of Wales are in America, not having an easy time because their tour is being overshadowed, eclipsed, certainly spoiled by the latest trailer from Netflix on the Harry and Meghan series of documentaries, which they reckon is going to come out
next week.
Next week.
Kiss means war, says the front of the Sun this morning.
And the front of the Express is quite a... It literally says, I think what so many of us think, Harry, do you really hate your family so much? Those words spread all over. How are they going to feel when they read that? They must have known it would cause this sort of consternation.
It's very hard. Very. But William and Catherine, 56% of people say they're the most favoured abroad. Harry and Meghan on 7%. Charles and Camilla on 8%. I thought Charles and Camilla, the King and Queen, would have been higher than that. But anyway, your thoughts on all of that, please. GBviews at gbnews.uk. It's 6:10. Let's bring you up to date with some of the other key stories today.
Well, the Defence Secretary says the Army has been neglected over the last 20 years. Ben Wallace made the comments in an interview with The Sun a week after the Chancellor announced the defence budget will remain at least 2% of GDP. He said £24 billion is being invested into the Army's equipment programme between now and the end of 2030. But the Army needs to catch up.
The number of children unable to afford lunch has risen in more than half of England's state schools. That's according to the Sutton Trust. 54% of teachers responding also said children were being dropped off at school without warm clothing. The charity has criticised the government for ignoring pleas to widen eligibility for free school meals in the last budget.
And Cornwall is to benefit from a £360 million devolution deal under new government plans. The proposed deal, which will require local consent and parliamentary approval, would give the county a locally elected mayor and a greater say over transport budgets, buildings and several other areas. And the government are calling that deal a landmark settlement. Cornwall has been after devolution ever since I've ever been on telly.
Yeah.
I don't know how it would work, but they're very, very strong-minded about it.
I'm not a fan of devolution, sort of thing.
I don't know whether it's helped terribly, has it?
Well, I don't think it has. But anyway, let us know what you think. Now, I'd like to know this morning several things. Worst Christmas present. What don't you want for Christmas?
Under the tree. I think that one of the worst Christmas presents ever has to be something that you recognise from the year before.
Oh, do you think?
It's been recycled, in other words.
Oh, I don't mind a recycled. I'm not bothered about it. But things that I can't remember which paper it is. I'll dig it out.
It's in the mail.
They've got a list.
Yeah, it's in the mail.
But it's... oh, we've got a picture. Let's have a look.
Oh, that's just the headline, yeah.
Weed killer and a Hoover bag.
Yeah, well, who would give anyone weed killer for Christmas?
What about a Hoover or an iron or all that sort of that sort of thing?
So let us know, what's the worst Christmas present you've ever had?
An electric foot warmer, one of those foot moth things.
Oh no, those are good.
Oh, are they?
Would you be insulted if I gave you one of those for Christmas? They're really lovely.
All right.
My brother watching the telly and you sink your feet into this electric.
My brother bought one for my mum once. Mind you, she was probably younger than me at the time. So I don't think she was hugely thrilled.
That is an old lady present if you're young, isn't it? What about weight loss pills? That's awful, isn't it? But the other one is a toilet plunger. I don't think that's a very romantic Christmas
plunger,
present,
no. I love that number one out of all this is out-of-date chocolates.
Yes, that's not very nice.
Well, I could think of worse things. I'd still eat them, wouldn't you?
Oh no. I mean, if chocolates are out of date, then they have to be very old, don't
They'd
they?
be fine.
Yeah.
Don't moan about it.
Hair removal cream. I mean, is that a sort of shrouded hint? That's horrible. Horrible smelling perfume. Ooh,
Well.
I remember once that being a Christmas many moons ago where my sister got a really horrible bottle of perfume.
What was it?
I can't say.
Oh.
I can't say. Because honestly, it's people would be too upset about it even now for me to dredge it up again. But it was horrible, and it was basically cheap and nasty.
Oh.
Whoever gave it.
You see, I remember the good old days. If you were buying your mum perfume for Christmas, or you bought Tweed, and if you bought it for your dad, it was either Old Spice or Brut.
Old Spice, yeah.
Brut. I always used to get a bottle of Brut.
Yeah. Old Spice. My dad always used to get Old Spice. He smelled of Old Spice. It's lovely, lovely. It reminds me of him all the time. But there were those particular brands, weren't they, that were big at the time, and everybody was wearing them. Actually, a bit naff, some of them, weren't they?
Well, that's about it. Yeah.
Naff perfume is not a good present. Yeah. So let us know, what's the worst Christmas present you've ever had?
Or given.
Or given.
Yes.
Maybe, I mean, there are those moments where you recycle a present. You think, that would be nice to give to so-and-so. And you've totally forgotten who gave it to you a year ago.
Probably the same person.
And you've given it back.
Yes,
you've given it back to them. That's awful.
Oops. There you go. Now, I wonder what the royals are giving each other for Christmas. What's Harry going to get for William, do we think?
Oh.
Maybe he'll do a nice little documentary for him. Well, the Netflix trailer for Harry and Meghan's documentary was released last night as the Prince of Wales tours the US city of Boston.
The trailer features never-before-seen private photographs of the couple, with them saying it's time for people to hear their side of the story.
No one sees what's happening behind the closed doors. I had to do everything I could to protect my family.
I mean, honest to goodness. Stephanie Tetchy is here. Morning, Steph.
Morning.
I mean, the way that's pitched, it makes it sound like someone was trying to kidnap his wife and child.
Well, you know what? Harry's been banging on about this for years, how he needs to protect his family. The thing about this trailer, I'm like, what more has Harry and Meghan got to say? Because I feel like they've said it all over the past 2 years, ever since they stepped down. But what they're promising with this series, which has been directed by Liz Garbus, who's critically acclaimed director, is they're saying they're actually going to talk about why they stepped down as royals, and we're going to get insight from when they were just in a clandestine relationship to actually being thrust into the public limelight. But it actually does feel like Harry and Meghan have sold their soul to Netflix. This has been 2 years in the making, and for a hefty price tag of £88 million. Ooh. So you can imagine this is not going to be no light documentary over 6 episodes. They're promising there's going to be interviews with friends and family who've never spoken before, who are going to talk about what they've witnessed. So there is a cause.
Of course they are. They've been paid a fee for doing it, won't they?
And there's a cause for a lot of royal anxiety, because, come on, this is coming in the middle of another race row for Buckingham Palace. William and Kate are currently in the US. This is William's big night for the Earthshot Prize, and it's now been overshadowed by his own brother. So a lot of the papers rightly is saying this is a declaration of war.
Yeah, because you can't quite see how they could ever row back from this.
No.
Because we always hope, don't we, that one day those two brothers will make friends again and that everything will calm down. But when he appears to be stabbing his family in the back, or even in the front, you could say, you wonder how they'll ever forgive him.
I felt optimistic when I saw the Fab Four at the Queen's funeral, and there was that kind of show of solidarity when they were walking out. And I remember a lot of people like, Steph, don't be so naive. And I thought this could be the change for them. This could be actually bring them back together. But clearly with this, and even with a shot of Kate in there, not looking...
That's the thing, isn't
not
it?
looking too best pleased when...
So many commentators in the press today have said they must have trawled through libraries of photographs to find one photograph of Kate, which is very unflattering and very severe. And how they found it, I don't know, but it is a horrid photograph of Kate.
And Meghan's already been quite open about her and Kate having an argument on the day of her wedding, and I just feel like you've already said and done this, what more do you have to act? And you know what, I've been a fan of Harry and Meghan, but I can see that Meghan is clearly acting up to the cameras for this.
And the issue is, I guess, as well, whatever they say is one side of a story, which a lot of us just aren't going to believe.
Yeah.
But there isn't going to be a response, is there?
No, because already Buckingham Palace, they've declined to comment on the documentary because obviously at the moment they're trying to make William and Kate have their big moment in the US. But I think a lot of damaging stuff is going to come out because also including it's going to be historians who are going to be adding their take on the state of the Commonwealth. And already that is quite a tense topic. So we're kind of moving away from Harry and Meghan to other issues that are surrounding the royal family.
I wonder if the King should say something, though, instead of just being quiet,
Yeah.
which was always the Queen's way. Never complain, never explain. But we live in a different world now.
Totally.
And unfortunately, Harry and Meghan are being allowed to set the tone of the narrative, aren't they?
That's
particularly
fine.
when you combine it with recent events at Buckingham Palace and, you know, allegations or thoughts, suspicions of racism, at least within the walls of BP, Buckingham Palace.
Well, I think that's why Harry and Meghan are having fun with it, because they know they're no longer part of the firm in that way, so they have the freedom to do such things like this. But I do feel like it's a bit of a Harry and Meghan overdose because, you know, they had the interview with Oprah, Meghan's done a photo shoot with Variety, then we've now got this, and then next month we've got Harry's autobiography. So it's this non-stop campaign, and it makes me think, OK, once you've done this and you've damaged relationships, what's next for you guys as a brand?
I tell you what, I can't help but wonder if this is going to be huge on Netflix for the first episode, maybe the first 2 or 3.
Yeah.
If it's a 6-parter, I wonder if those figures are going to drop off.
No, I don't think they will, because I think every episode will deliver a bombshell. Like, Meghan's got her podcast, and every week, Stephen, in the papers, there's a new line about what Meghan said. It's like they know how to get people hooked. In the first hour alone of this trailer being released, it had 300,000 views just in the hour.
Yeah, and as you said, it's an acclaimed director who's made it. They've thrown money at it.
Yeah, it's Hollywood.
It's utter Hollywood, isn't it? They're going to end every one episode with the trailer of
with
the next.
Cliffhanger.
There'll be a bombshell cliffhanger on everyone.
And it's that thing on Netflix, we all get used to binge watching. So
yeah, and I do wonder with it's been some of the papers I can't think which one it is now has got them, but all these intimate pictures, you know, really intimate private pictures. What? Well, they've had an intimate one with a photographer.
Oh,
in
definitely.
The house.
But that's what's scary, Stephen, because the cameras have been following them since 2020, and we know so much has happened in the last 2 years that I don't think nothing has been held off from this documentary, including maybe the Queen's funeral. I think there's going to be a lot of twists and turns in this.
Oh. I know.
I just want, you know, I really have wanted to be behind Meghan do this. I thought she got a lot of bad flack in the press and all that. I thought people are just being unkind here. But I've changed my mind. I've changed my mind.
I finally saw the actress in Meghan when I watched that trailer. But I think as well, like, our relationship with the royals are taking a new turn where I think, you know, with the Queen, things were much more dignified. But now we're kind of, I feel like we're in that showbiz era of royals where we all want to know what's going on because it's quite transparent. Things are going wrong.
What they're doing as well with this documentary is they're doing a Diana panorama, aren't they?
Yeah.
I mean, when you look again at that panorama interview, you realise that Diana wanted to politically assassinate Prince Charles. She said he was unfit for office. She actually said that. And this is the sort of thing you're getting from Harry and Meghan now, that Buckingham Palace aren't up to the job, that they're casually racist in some way. And that's such a terribly serious allegation.
And it hasn't helped with all these events that have been happening, so it plays into Harry and Meghan's hands. And I think, you know, with directors, they're like, actually, they heard about this story and thought, let's release the trailer today. You know, it's all very calculated.
Yeah. Stephanie, for now.
Thank you.
Such a shame, because it is the Prince and Princess of Wales's visit to Boston at the moment for the Earthshot Prize. And yes, you can argue that it's been completely overshadowed now by this royal race row and Harry and Meghan's announcement of their upcoming docuseries, where we have learned they're going to probably talk about their experiences and why they decided to step back as working royals. Where our royal reporter, Cameron Walker, sent us this report from Boston.
Despite a royal race row and a Sussex docu-series on the horizon, the Prince and Princess of Wales focused on their passions yesterday, visiting local organisations that support their communities. Perhaps an engagement that encompassed most of Will and Kate's interests was Roker, which has supported vulnerable young people for almost 35 years. Roca's founder explains how Will and Kate are helping to break stigmas.
They both individually and collectively have a real interest around a range of mental health issues: early childhood, addiction, youth homelessness, and working with emergency response workers. They've really sort of leaned in on this. How do you destigmatize mental health? How do you help people get access to resources?
I met with young men supported by Roca. 22-year-old Jonathan was jailed for an attempted robbery, but Roca's support has helped him turn his life around.
They was definitely on me to change, challenging my thinking ability. And even behind the walls, I was going through a lot of things I was thinking. So it was a challenge that I overcame.
Matt's childhood was difficult and he was taken away from his parents by the authorities. Roca's helped him cope with past trauma.
From a year ago till now, I'm a complete different person. I got my head on straight, you know. I got the right goals now, so I'm doing the right thing.
Kate had the opportunity to focus on early childhood development with Roca's Young Mothers programme. Like the princess, Sunindya Bala, who runs it, believes the first 5 years of a child's life are crucial.
I'm so thrilled that the princess is interested in this area because it is a really important time in a child's development. And yet what we know about the families that we work with is that in order to break that cycle, in order to make sure that children thrive, we really have to stabilize their mothers and help them.
A quick dash across breezy Boston was Will and Kate's opportunity to see firsthand how the city is remaining optimistic about climate change.
The doom and gloom approach to climate change really isn't very helpful. So we really want to think about what the opportunities are and how we can all come together to address this.
Boston's a city showing the world how to adapt to a changing climate and sea levels rising. This living seawall behind me is an example of just that. It not only protects the homes behind it, but also absorbs the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Will and Kate have learnt all about it. Today, Hollywood A-listers joined the Prince and Princess on the recycled green carpet for the Earthshot Prize. Prince William uses his global platform to help others. Others appear to use theirs to talk about themselves. Cameron Walker, GB News, Boston.
Tell you what, I don't know how Kate does it, but they are in freezing conditions at the moment. It is absolutely below zero in Boston, and yet she is stepping out in these gorgeous designer coats and
She's got her thermals on.
She must have thermals on.
Yes.
She must have. Because she still looks so svelte and gorgeous. I mean, the rest of the world dresses up in a great big, anorak. She's looking absolutely fantastic.
To be fair,
she must have very thin thermals on.
Cameron looked a bit cold there.
Yeah, it's chilly. It's chilly there at the moment, but still she looks so glam.
Yeah, wow. Now, coming up, we're going to be talking fuel poverty. Is it really heating versus eating? We'll find out. First, so here's your weather.
Hello, a very good morning to you. It's Aidan McGibbon here from the Met Office. Foggy for many of us once again this morning, but brighter skies are on their way later. Unlike yesterday when the fog didn't clear in places, today the fog will lift because what's happening is the isobars across the map are now tightening up around the periphery of a large area of high pressure to the east, and that will bring an increased easterly breeze through the day. So that's going to make it feel colder through the next few days, but it will also help to lift the mist and fog that we've got around first thing. So after poor visibility on the roads during the morning, the fog does lift by the afternoon. The easterly breeze is still bringing a fair amount of cloud in. I don't think there'll be much sunshine, but there will be some sun coming through Northern Ireland, West Wales, Cornwall, as well as parts of North East England. There'll also be some showers into the east coast of England, but it will feel cold with the wind, 5 to 9 Celsius, and when you add on the wind, well, you can take off a few degrees for the wind chill effect. A lot of cloud for Scotland and some patchy rain clearing the far north of Scotland, but otherwise it's mostly a dry picture. And for many places it's a fine end to the week. There'll be no fog forming on Friday night, but there will be a lot of cloud feeding in and further showers into eastern and central areas. Clear spells to the west will lead to a touch of frost in places first thing Saturday, but the frost won't be widespread because of the extent of the cloud and because of that breeze helping to stir things up. It will be particularly gusty along the English Channel coast as well as the North Sea coast, and both these areas will feel cold because of the wind direction. The wind will also bring in further showers into the east, and also there'll be a spell of more persistent light rain affecting the northwest of Scotland. It'll be mild in the far northwest of Scotland, 9 to 10 degrees.
are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and tune-in apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
6:30 morning to you, watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Anne. Just want to mention, do you know what? I think we need to all take a little bit of a step back. Because loads of you have been in touch on the People's Poll stuff, right?
Yeah.
And Gary, I bet a pound to a penny, Gary, that you have in the past voted Conservative. And Gary now says, the Tories are traitors to the British people. I will be voting Reform UK. Now, Gary, you may think that now the Tories aren't representing what you want and Reform UK are, and that's entirely up to you. But to say they're traitors, Gary, why does what I don't understand is why with a lot of people, everything is either it's black or white.
But there's a lot of anger out there.
There is anger, I know, but, you know, no political party is a traitor to the British people. Yeah, people just have different ideas and we decide which one we think fits best with us. And if Reform UK worked better for you, then absolutely fine.
It's your right to vote.
But
that's
to say they're traitors, I just think it's a bit much for me. Got to be honest.
Do you think we allow the newspapers, the media, to set the rhetoric wrong?
I think so.
You know, well, we're going to be talking about that now, where, you know, the heating versus eating debate, and whether that's the situation we're in at the moment. We're calling it a crisis Christmas and things like that. 100 strikes of Christmas, they're saying. Do we allow these phrases then to set our mood? And that mood is very negative. On the other hand, if you are struggling, you feel pretty negative probably at the moment.
A lot of people have been in touch saying it's not heating versus eating for the vast majority of people. It is for some, but that's a very, very, very small number. It's not to say people aren't struggling, but it's not quite as stark as that.
And I also say when there are reports that parents are sending their children to school without warm clothing, do you know, there's no excuse for that.
No.
That's not about poverty, because you can go to a charity shop, or frankly, you can go to a great many charities and they will make sure you've got something for your kids to keep them warm. That's bad parenting. And I know I've been on about this before, but isn't it?
I agree entirely. I do. I think there's a responsibility there that parents need to meet.
Yeah.
Anyway, look, it is, believe it or not, Fuel Poverty Awareness Day today. So a campaign's being launched aiming to offer energy debt advice and cheaper tariffs.
And this comes as the charity National Energy Action predicts that by April, 8.4 million households will actually be unable to afford to heat their homes.
Well, let's talk to Howard Cox, who's founder of Fair Fuel UK, who joins us now. Howard, good to see you this morning. I mean, is Do you understand these figures that are being touted out and millions of people being unable to afford to heat their homes? Does that ring true to you?
Yes, good morning. Nice to see you again. What we're getting is that I actually fight on diesel and petrol prices. As you know, Fairfield UK has been set up for 13 years to actually try and reduce fuel duty and things. But our supporters, and we've got 1.7 million of them, are made up of people who can't afford to fill their car up most of the time. And the same people are saying they can't afford to heat their homes. I sort of agree with you that the fact is it is a minority, but it's a growing minority. More and more people are having to make decisions whether to actually, turn their thermostats down, etc., whether they get a cheaper cut of meat or something like that. Those sorts of things. They're making choices. At the moment, no one's starving, etc. But this particular initiative today, this campaign day, I applaud it because next March, I think the government are actually withdrawing, I think it was the £67 a month support in terms of actually helping in terms of paying bills, etc. And people will struggle. That's a lot of money on a living wage type level of person.
Gas wholesale prices are now at the same level they were at 12 months ago. Am I right there? Yeah. And if so, why are energy prices still apparently going up and worrying people?
Well, that's the multi-million-dollar question we've all been asking. It's the same with petrol and diesel. Diesel is the highest it's ever been with record prices, and it's 20 to 25p more than petrol. Yesterday in Parliament, Andrea Leadsom and Penny Mordaunt at the Dispatch box gave a lot of credit to what I'm doing at Fairfield UK. We need a body to actually tell us exactly how these prices are calculated, and that's true of the gas prices as well. It is a complete lottery. There's a sort of a faceless bunch of businessmen sitting behind their desks deciding what we pay. And as you quite rightly say, the wholesale price is exactly the same as it was last year, and the actual what we paid on our bills was something like 40% less. So why? And the government must get on top of this, and that's why I applaud this awareness day to make sure they put pressure on government.
To petrol pumps, doesn't it? Why is it that even where I live, I mean, quite a decent way outside of London, there's, my local petrol station is £1.70, 0.9. If I drive 5 miles down the road, it's 151.9. It's a huge... How can that be that they're charging... There's such a price differential?
Well, they've been allowed to get away with this for a long, long time. Again, we're looking at wholesale prices, which have fallen considerably. In the last 6 weeks, for example, they've fallen by something like 15 to 20%. But petrol and diesel prices have hardly changed. Petrol's come down a bit, diesel's come down a bit, but not by much. And the difference across different areas usually is based on competition in that area, or whether if there's 3 garages very close to each other, you'll find they're pretty close to each other. But if there's a big gap, let's say 5 or 6 miles, that garage can charge what it's like. But it's not down to those independent owners or retailers themselves at the forecourts. It is down to the wholesale businesses further up in the fuel supply chain who have systematically and opportunistically been profiteering at will. And bear in mind, the government allows this to happen because they've had a shed load of extra billions, of something like £3 billion of extra VAT because of these high prices. And so that's why I'm setting up a body called Pump Watch. And I've been asked by Jeremy Hunt to actually put together a plan how this would work. We've got Ofcom, we've got Ofgem, we've got Ofcom. Why haven't we got for 37 million drivers some consumer price regulatory body for filling up?
But Jeremy Hunt has asked you to launch this Pump Watch, watching prices. No, but I mean,
no, and he hasn't asked me to launch it through various MPs. He's asked how would Pump Watch work, and I've already, when Robert Jenrick was Exchequer Secretary back in 15, 16, I can't remember now. I actually proposed this idea then, and he liked the idea, provided it wasn't too much legislation behind it. It could be a voluntary body, maybe a kite mark on a garage that you could go by and say this garage adheres to fair pricing at the pumps. That's probably the stage one. But Jeremy Hunt was met with Jonathan Gullis, who is Mr Fairfield UK in Parliament at the moment for me. He met with Jeremy Hunt, and Jeremy Hunt said, yes, I'd like to know more about Howard Cox's Fairfield UK's idea for a pump watch body. So watch this space, Anne and Stephen, and obviously I'll come on and tell you all about it when I know more.
Yeah, but that implies, doesn't it, that Jeremy Hunt doesn't know how these things are working, that he is just sort of interested. But, surely in government he should be on top of it already.
I couldn't agree more with you. I mean, this is what I've been putting up for 13 years, Ian, and you've interviewed me a few times. And when I actually go into government and I sit there, I remember sitting with one particular deputy to a chancellor, and around the table, and their wonderful mahogany table with these expensive paintings in the Treasury, there was about 30 special advisors and civil servants on one side, and I was on the other side on my own. And I explained to them, do you realise we're the only country in the world that prices diesel more than petrol? And they all looked at each other and they didn't know. And this is the sort of thing we're up against, I'm afraid. And I thank and I applaud GB News really for allowing me to get this across, because they do listen.
Well, let's hope they really do listen to what you're having to say.
I'm astonished by that.
Howard, really good to see you this morning. Thanks very much indeed. I mean, it does drive me crazy, because you just feel like you're being ripped off. They're just taking advantage.
And then, and they just profess an interest in pump watch or whatever else. If you ask the government to take things seriously, they launch a sort of independent working party, which takes about 5 years to set up and involves a lot of people sitting around a lovely polished mahogany desk, just talking. We need action, don't we?
Yeah. Well, if you get Howard on board, perhaps...
maybe that would be a good idea.
Something happened fairly quickly. That would be reassuring, wouldn't it? Just on Harry and Meghan, Catherine says they have a new documentary, don't care. And Sam says we won't be watching the Markle saga. If we want soap, there's always Days of Our Lives. What a shambolic mess.
I think the truth is, though, it will get very high viewing figures, because everybody will just be gobsmacked curious about what they're going to say.
See, I can say I will not watch it.
You've got to watch it. You've got to know what they said.
No, I don't want to. I just don't want to watch it.
I don't want to, but I know I'm going to have to.
No.
But I think you're right. I think it'll get very boring after 6 episodes.
It's going to get a bit much. Anyway, look, we're going to take a short break. We've got the papers heading away in a couple of minutes.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
There's a guy who went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
.42 morning to you, watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Anne.
Let's take a look at today's front pages. The Times draws attention to the imminent rail strikes, as well as Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's upcoming Netflix documentary.
The Mirror has the royal crisis deepening.
The Sun says kiss means war, as Meghan and Harry's trailer sabotages Will's and Kate's US trip.
The Mail gives light not only to Harry and Meghan's documentary, but also Matt Hancock's revelation about potentially releasing prisoners during the COVID pandemic.
And finally, the Star's front page says it all, doesn't it? Publicity-shy couple share most intimate secrets with 8 billion people.
Yeah.
That's quite a headline.
Yeah, it's all you need to know. Let's go through the papers now. Today, senior reporter from the Eye, Benjamin Butterworth, and broadcaster Liz Kershaw. Good morning to you
Good morning.
both.
Good morning.
Benjamin, let's have a look at the Sussexes in the Times, should we?
Yeah, so this is the Netflix documentary that we've known is coming for a long time. And in a mysterious twist, the first glimpse of it came out just as Catherine and William landed in the US. And, you know, if you've not seen it, it doesn't reveal that much. You see a series of photos, but then Prince Harry makes this comment where he says, no one sees what's happening behind closed doors.
Oh, funny enough, that's the same for me.
What, in your life?
Yes, people don't see what happens in my house.
Exactly, and I think some people feel like maybe we've seen a bit too much of behind closed doors with Harry and Meghan. They don't seem shy of sharing, as the Daily Star front page mocks with that.
And yet they left royal service because they wanted privacy.
Yeah. Exactly, and I think a lot of people will find it provocative, the timing. Now, the Sussexes have said that this wasn't an attempt to trip up, William and Catherine. They say that Netflix decided when it was going to come out. And, look, it's possible that Netflix were the people that chose this provocative time. But I find it hard to believe that if you're Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, that you don't have a considerable degree of control over these things. They're clearly in the power seat in a situation like this. And it has caused such a furore. And it feels like they're trying to publicly have a spat yet again, which, I don't really like the idea of taking sides on either of these. I just think the whole thing is quite uncomfortable and not particularly kind.
The Times actually makes the point that they're almost behaving like the Kardashians.
Yeah, I mean, that is kind of how it's like. There's always has to be a storyline, there always has to be controversy. And, for a couple that, as you mentioned, didn't seemingly want to have their private life in public, well, then why are you saying that no one knows what's going on behind closed doors?
Well, yes, exactly. The Mirror, Liz, is looking at all of this and saying the royal crisis deepens as a result.
Yeah, I understand the importance of a constitutional monarchy, but I do think, and we'll probably talk about this more during the morning, that as long as you've got a royal family in a monarchy, you'll never have levelling up properly, you'll never have equality, there'll always be grace and favour, there'll always be privilege, there'll always be entitlement. The one saving grace of that lot has been their good grace and their dignity and their class. And now they're just behaving like trailer trash. It's not just not kind, as Benjamin described it, which was very kind of him. I think it's downright deliberately malicious. And it's obviously Netflix will have a huge PR budget and PR machine to maximise the interest and awareness of this series. They'll have picked the timing quite deliberately. Now, Harry and Meghan, I don't know if they've, had experience before, but sometimes, and I got my fingers burnt many years ago, if you give a bit and then you find that a newspaper, for example, will get right in there and then you lose control and then it runs away with it and it's out of your hands and suddenly all your family's upset and you're begging the newspaper, please don't, and they're not interested. So I don't know how much of this is deliberately malice on the timing on their part.
Well, they will have been daft if they didn't get copy approval of the book and approval of
I'm talking
final
about
cut of
I'm
the
talking about this timing.
The timing. They might not.
They might not have. But it's so undignified and malicious. I mean, what the hell was the slight? What was done to them?
That was so appalling.
It's just I can't comprehend that they would do this to your own flesh and blood. No, I can't.
It puts the king in an impossible position now because everybody's basically saying you've got to strip them of their titles. You've just got to now. This is so appalling. And yet that is his son.
Yeah, it's a personal attack on your own flesh and blood, but it's also an attack on our constitutional democracy, our way of life. And they just keep coming, don't they? Even the census this week, the ONS tidied up the census from last year, and confirm the figures. The headline that was used was a minority now in this country are Christian. 46%. That's nearly half. 22% said no religion. I was one of those. I ticked the no religion because I don't practice anything. I still have morals and an ethical code and beliefs, you know, and actually the Muslim and Christian ethical codes really fundamentally aren't that much different. So it was just the way it was. Then they were saying there shouldn't be bishops in the House of Lords, something to school. Well, everything this week, all our institutions
are being attacked, yeah.
Undermined. It's like relentless. It's like a concerted campaign.
But it's also like the headline coming out of that census, yes, actually was almost deliberately stirring things up.
Yeah.
So
that's
what?
Headlines for you.
Yeah.
Let's have a look at the Mail and Matt Hancock's revelations.
Oh, that's the next thing.
So, Matt Hancock, who's, I think, the only person that shares more than Harry and Meghan at the moment, we seem to know everything about him, he's revealed that during the early stages of the COVID pandemic, there was a plan to release prisoners because they thought it would be easier to manage them, because there was a problem that COVID spread quite badly in prisons. And, of course, you know, when you've got a lot of people in close quarters, some of them often aren't in the best of health. It was, you know, a real issue that was going on. Of course, later in the pandemic, you had suggestions of putting people in prison for not getting the vaccine. So clearly there was quite a U-turn on the effect of prisons and COVID. But he's revealed that that was a plan and that he had to resist that thousands of prisoners could have been let out, not at the time they were meant to be.
Well, the rest of us were locked down.
Yeah, exactly.
That's odd.
Yeah, if you'd done a crime sufficient to get you in prison, that might have been the only way to not be locked up.
With a very low security, open prison style people, it's not going to be your murderers and your rapists getting out.
But I mean, you know, you don't go in prison if you've done something meaningless. You know, you have to have done something that we've deemed that you shouldn't be, you know, wandering around Asda every day. And I think, you know, this is pretty incredible insight, but it kind of makes me slightly uncomfortable that we're getting this information, you know, in the wake of a celebrity stint in the jungle.
Well, he's bringing out a book, isn't he, which apparently the Mail online is going to start serialising from 5 o'clock this afternoon.
Oh, can't wait.
I wonder what it's full of.
There is going to be a COVID inquiry, a proper, thorough, democratic process for people to come forward and say what happened and do an assessment like you had the Chilcot inquiry for the Iraq War and Tony Blair. And that is the appropriate way in which this information should be shared.
Do you think he's trying to set the narrative before the inquiry?
I think you're a very cynical lady, Anne Diamond. I think that might well be the case. I think you're right.
No, interesting, isn't it? Let's have a look at industrial strikes in The Guardian, Liz. There could be a joint Christmas strike within the NHS.
Yeah, because the different unions, whether you're a paramedic, ambulance driver, a nurse, a cleaner, a porter, now they're trying to have a combined effort, coordinate the days. I'd just like to point out, because I haven't really seen this flagged up, there was an interactive tool in the Telegraph yesterday online where you could put in your hospital, nearest hospital, and see if they were on strike, because actually the majority of trusts, there are 162 across England and Wales. I'm not sure how many there are in Northern Ireland, and Scotland's Sturgeon's supposedly doing her own deal, but there are 162, and about less than half of them are actually affected because the strike ballot didn't reach the threshold. Right. So good news, Stephen.
Well, good news.
Twixt Milton Keynes and Northampton Hospital, neither of them is affected.
Right.
So it very much depends where you are. Even across the whole of Yorkshire, it's only really Leeds hospitals.
But December the 20th is a different kettle of fish, isn't it? Because there is going to be coordinated health workers' strike action.
Well, yeah, if they can organise it. I was talking specifically about whether the trusts, the staff in the hospitals, not all, you know, don't...
I'm surprised.
I'm saying please don't panic, everybody, because actually it's not as bad potentially as is being reported, because the strike is not that solid. It's like I've been saying that last couple of weeks. Our post lady is not going on strike. Read in the area, she says they don't want to strike.
No, but can she actually deliver an email if it's the sorting office?
If it's not being given to her to deliver.
Well, we could do it in the village. We could give her our mail and she could take it 3 doors up for us.
Well, she
keep
could
her
do.
busy. Yeah, I haven't got your card yet.
I posted them yesterday.
Right.
Well, and that's what the next thing they're warning is even if you post it now, it won't get to its destination by Christmas. That's what they're warning.
Yeah, this is the front page.
Is that another scare headline?
Well, I mean, this is the front page of today's iNewspaper, so the iNewspaper wouldn't scare you. It's pretty damning. So some postal workers from around the country, lots of different parts of the country, so it's not isolated to one depot. They've shown pictures of piles and piles of trolleys full of post, way more than they're meant to deal with. And so there are strikes of postal workers going on, 6 days of strikes over pay and conditions. And they're saying that if you send your Christmas card now, it's probably not going to visit, and that they've never seen such a mess at December as the one that we've got in the post service now.
Well, you've got to keep your fingers crossed on that one. We're out of time. Liz, Benjamin, we'll see you a little bit later on. Thank you.
That'll be why my bin never got to me.
Oh,
Remember,
is it still not got your bin?
Still not got to me, no.
Oh, that's weeks overdue.
It is, literally, now.
Yeah.
Nobody to put me rubbish.
No.
Crisis.
Well, from that crisis to another one, because Britain could be in for a prolonged period of high death rates because people stayed away from the NHS during the pandemic. That's according to the Chief Medical Officer for England.
Pleas to protect the NHS, do you remember that, combined with the pressure of treating COVID, were likely to lead to significant numbers dying of heart conditions, heart disease, cancer, things like that. It was predicted, and there are those who are now saying it will happen.
I mean, it's really concerning, actually, that is the case. I mean, we've talked about this for a very long time. They're now saying this could be the worst winter for the NHS in living memory, as far as the records go back. Hugely, hugely worrying. Let's talk to a statistician about some of this. Former head of health analysis at the ONS, Jamie Jenkins. Morning to you, Jamie. I mean, what can you tell us about these figures?
Yeah, I think what we've been seeing kind of over the last half year now is we've been seeing higher than expected deaths across the country. And we are seeing kind of more deaths than what you would expect from kind of heart issues. And it kind of concurs with what Chris Whitty and Professor Patrick Vallance has been saying, is that over the course of the pandemic, a lot of people kind of stayed home to protect the NHS. I think the intent probably there was to stay home to stop kind of mixing and infecting each other. But a lot of people kind of stayed home away from the NHS. So what we've kind of seen now is this big rise in waiting lists. We've got 7 million people kind of on waiting lists. We've got 400,000 who've been on waiting lists for over a year. And the big concern, I suppose, is that we're seeing kind of big increases in waiting lists for people waiting for kind of heart kind of treatment as well. That's at 50%. So what we are kind of being borne out in the figures already is that the potential impact of people kind of staying away, not getting treatment through the pandemic, is leading to kind of deaths. I think what Professor Chris Whitty and Patrick Vallance are kind of saying, this is kind of warning people for a future pandemic that, you know, obviously people who have stayed away, it could be causing more longer term issues in the NHS and people dying.
Have you ever seen figures like this before, particularly during a winter as we go into the depths of winter?
Well, the concern, I suppose, Anne, is we've been seeing these higher than expected deaths, I say, from most of the half of the year now. So I think the big concern as we go into the winter is we are seeing an uptick in flu this year. We knew from Australia we would expect to see something happening this year when you track what happened in flu. So we are seeing more hospital patients with flu. We probably now at that point where we're starting to see a winter wave of COVID. So that's kind of kicking into the figures at the moment. And we've got planned strikes as well. So, you know, you've got this tsunami of all of the backlog. You've got the kind of the respiratory flu virus and the COVID probably coming back as well. And that's going to add to the pressures. I think, you know, the big concern, obviously, is people have stayed away. I think that what they were talking about as well is we're probably going to have more cancer deaths in the long term as well. We're not really seeing that in the figures yet. It's more of a long-term impact when you start looking at kind of cancer overall. But we do know, if you just look at in terms of the number of patients that have started treatment or come forward, there are a lot of missing patients in the data that haven't come forward for cancer. So there's a ticking time bomb out there as well for that.
We're very nearly out of time, so just very briefly, I mean, this is tragic for these individual families, but is it too late now? There's the damage already been done when it comes to these missed appointments.
Well, I think if you've got stage 4 cancer, that's going to be a ticking time bomb, and it's going to be very difficult. But there are a lot, there's treatments out there for a lot of different things. I would just encourage people to get forward. We do know that GP surgery kind of closed the doors. You couldn't get face-to-face appointments during the pandemic. That's kind of turning back now. We are getting that. So anybody who's got any issues, I'd encourage them to get forward. But what we are seeing, Stephen, as well, is a lot of people are going private or going to abroad to get treatment. So I think, try and get the treatment if you can.
OK. Jamie Jenkins, good to talk to you this morning. Thank you. We are out of time, but we're back in a couple of minutes with all your headlines.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Labour has won the Chesterfield by-election the Chester by-election in the first public vote since Boris Johnson and Liz Truss left number 10.
Good morning to you. It's 7 o'clock. It's Friday, the 2nd of December. This is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Anne. These are your top stories today.
So Labour has won the Chester by-election, delivering a major blow to Rishi Sunak in his first electoral test as Prime Minister. The winner, Samantha Dixon, retained the seat for Labour, and she said it sent a clear message to the government.
Now, from your opinion on the Prime Minister to who you'd vote for in the next general election, we'll reveal the latest results from our GB News People's Poll.
And as Harry and Meghan released the trailer for their much-anticipated Netflix documentary series, we're in Boston as William and Catherine visit locals and attempt to put the recent race storm behind them.
Love to get your views on that or anything else we're talking about this morning. You know how to get in touch. gbviews@gbnews.uk.
So, brand new news. Labour has won the City of Chester by-election. Councillor Samantha Dixon retained the seat for Labour and described the City of Chester as a bellwether constituency.
Now, it's a blow for Rishi Sunak. It's his first electoral test since becoming Prime Minister, of course, so it is a bit of a blow for him. Let's talk to our North West of England reporter, Sophie Reaper. I mean, look, Labour expected to keep this seat, Sophie, but there's been a significant swing to Labour, hasn't there, overnight?
It absolutely has, yes. Good morning to you both. Yesterday, the people of Chester took to the polls in order to select a new MP, and it was Labour candidate Samantha Dixon who was celebrating in the early hours of this morning. Now, it's worth saying the reason for this by-election was because the former Labour MP, Christian Matheson, was forced to step down after allegations of serious sexual misconduct. Now, the result here in Chester doesn't come as much as a surprise given the last few months in politics, but I don't think what any of us could have predicted was the worst Tory result in this constituency since 1832. Samantha Dixon took over 17,000 votes. That's a 61% of the votes. She also took almost 11,000 votes more than the Tory candidate Liz Wardlaw. Now, I was here in the constituency yesterday speaking to some of the voters, and I must say the majority of them did tell me they were going to vote for Labour, so it didn't really come as much of a surprise to me. However, what I will say is that a lot of them weren't particularly fussed one way or another. What they are concerned about are the issues facing this constituency. This is what some of them told me.
I'd like to see the town a lot cleaner than it is, and also there are too many empty shops and they need to be filled.
Immigration. What about immigration?
I don't want any more coming into this country.
And why not?
Because we can't afford to feed our own, never mind the immigrants.
To improve the environment, to unfortunately reduce the dependency on motor cars.
They've got to ensure that rents and rates are right for the town, because it's a leisure and commercial centre. So those have got to be sorted out so that the shops are filled. There are too many voids in this town.
Well, there's so much that needs doing, but I don't think they'll bother doing it because one party's the same as the other. We're not being levelled up here at all. It's just words levelling up. They don't carry out what they say they're going to do. They just talk the talk, they don't walk the walk.
Well, as we've just heard, there's plenty for the new MP of this constituency, Sam Dixon, to be getting on with. But I'm sure she won't be too concerned about that. I'm sure the Labour Party as a whole won't be too concerned about that. I think, given the situation, they'll just be pleased that they've managed to retain this seat here in Chester.
Sophie, before we say goodbye, tell us what that building is behind you. Is it the town hall or is it just a posh hotel? It looks a bit Harry Potter from our point of view.
The white and black building just over my shoulder, a lot of the buildings here in Chester are actually like that. It's quite a oldie-worldy kind of place, but I think the building with the clock, I don't think that's particularly the town hall. I think it's just a nice bit of architecture.
There you go.
Well, it looks absolutely lovely. It really does. Nice to see you there today.
It's a beautiful city. Of course, you've got the
walls.
walls.
It's ancient Roman.
Yes, you've got the wall. You can walk the walls in Chester, and it's beautiful. Haven't been for a while.
No, it looks lovely lit up like that.
We need to do a show from there.
We do. It's about the 15th time you said you're placing us around the country.
I know. We are going to go on a little tour at some point. Don't know when it's a little bit warmer, but get in touch if you'd like us to come where you are. GBViews at GBNews.
Yeah, I'd like to go to Belfast and do the programme from the Titanic experience there.
Yeah.
Because they've rebuilt the staircase.
Yes.
And we could do the show from the staircase.
Oh,
and when guests come on, they could walk down the staircase to meet us. It looks fab.
It's not the generation game, you know.
We could do a Kate Winslet, Leonardo DiCaprio moment.
Could we?
By the clock. Yeah.
Oh, all right.
I've got it all worked out.
Yeah, well, there you go. Sounds good to me. As we ponder that, it's time now for the GB News People's Poll.
Well, here's interesting. Let's look at what people have been saying. On Rishi Sunak, 43% in the poll hold an unfavourable view of the Prime Minister.
When asked who you'd vote for in the next general election, 46% of you said Labour, 21% Tories.
And when asked whether they will vote at all in the next general election, 54% say yes, they're certain to vote. 12%, though, say they will definitely not.
So, what do we make of all of that? Let's talk to our political correspondent, Tom Harwood, who's here. Tom, good morning to you. In terms of the state of the parties at the moment, 25-point gap. Now, you would have thought ordinarily there is a bounce when you've got a new Prime Minister. We haven't seen that, have we?
No, Tories on just 21 points in this poll, and that's basically the same place that Liz Truss was at, of course, at the nadir of her premiership. And the whole argument of Conservative MPs for turfing out Liz Truss after just 45 days and getting in Rishi Sunak was that it would improve the electoral prospects of the party. Well, that hasn't seemed to happen quite yet. Now, of course, there's a long time before the next general election. A week's a long time in politics, let alone 2 years. But if I were a Conservative MP, I might be getting a little bit jittery right now that things aren't seeming to budge, that to some extent people are thinking that there hasn't been that great deal of change, or that they're not buying what the Conservatives are selling, or indeed that the Conservatives aren't giving any message of hope, any opportunity of what they want the country to look like. It's hard to name a positive Conservative Party policy at this stage. It just seems like damage mitigation and not much jam for tea. It's all sort of austerity 2.0, tax rises along with the promise of future spending restraint as well. There's not much sort of hope that's being offered.
No, and that's interesting when we asked about would you vote at all in the next general election. And, I mean, I know it's early days, but a lot of people simply don't want to vote at all.
We saw this phenomenon under the last few months of Boris Johnson in power. It wasn't so much that Conservative voters were switching to the Labour Party. It's that Conservative voters started sitting on their hands and not wanting to vote for any party. Now, it does seem that that's changed a little bit. We have seen more direct switching in the last few months between the Conservative Party and the Labour Party. But 12% saying they won't vote at all. Perhaps that's not the most surprising result. After all, we've known that the turnout in the last election was around 71%. So that was, 29% of people staying home. Similarly, we usually see a solid chunk of the electorate stay home. It has been a smaller chunk, though, in recent years. Back to 2001, that was the lowest ever turnout. That was just over around 50%. That was a really real big worry because we were getting governments elected on a tiny proportion of those who could vote. That had been growing. The Brexit referendum saw a very high turnout, and the subsequent elections a high turnout as well. But really interesting questions around, particularly when we look at by-elections, because the number of those who vote is so much lower. Who can get their vote out is just as important as whether people agree with what the parties are saying or not.
We don't yet know what the turnout was for Chester, do we?
I think I can find you that in just a moment if we talk amongst ourselves.
Because it was a Labour seat. Originally, and it's been retained by Labour.
So the turnout was 41% in the by-election.
It's not very good, is it? Is that good for a by-election?
It's actually pretty standard for a by-election. By-elections never usually see sort of more than half of the population turn out. It's an interesting seat, though, Chester. Of course, it was won by the Labour Party in the nadir of Jeremy Corbyn's premiership, 2019, when the Labour Party won their fewest seats since 1935. The City of Chester was still won by the Labour Party with 50% of the vote. Now, last night we saw that rise to 61% of the vote, but perhaps it's not that surprising. We usually see a swing against governments during by-elections, and to see that 50% of the vote go to 61% of the vote, perhaps it's not the most stunning result that we would have seen. Certainly seeing Sam Dixon, the new Labour MP for that seat, calling it a bellwether.
Well, that seems
very odd, because bellwethers usually mean that when the government changes, the seat changes. Now, it's true that in the past, the City of Chester has been a Conservative seat. In 1992, Giles Brandreth represented the City of Chester.
Oh, it's Giles' old seat.
But he lost it in 1997. And, of course, it's been Labour for the last few elections as well. But, of course, we see demographic change in these seats and whatever. It's now what would be considered as a relatively safe Labour seat.
Yeah, interesting, isn't it, all of this? Within all of this, where do you see the future for the Labour Party? Because there's been a sense, hasn't there, that they are, up until now, if Sir Keir sits on his hands, he's going to do all right. He has started dabbling, has he, throwing a few bits out, like immigration, getting stuck into the immigration argument. And one of the questions in our poll was, is immigration too high? 54% saying yes in all of this. Well, he's putting Labour in a pretty strong position for those people who are fed up with our levels of immigration, isn't he?
He's certainly throwing scraps of red meat there. Now, when we drill into the detail, it's not that the Labour Party leader says that he'd want to bring the overall level down. He says that he'd want to work towards training more British people, and it doesn't seem that there is a really clear policy when it comes to the Labour Party and migration, but what there was mood music, and to some extent that's more important, because people can't often sort of pluck the particulars of policy if you ask them on the street. What they can tell you is a relative vibe of how parties are sounding. And what Keir Starmer seems to understand, and particularly the team around him at the Leader of the Opposition's office, is that they are trying to present this much more centrist, much more moderate, much more safe sort of Labour Party to vote for. The kind of thing that perhaps your Middle England Conservative voter wouldn't feel afraid of voting for. That's been their big mission, although to some extent there has been a diversion from that in the last 5 days, and that's this row over independent schools and taxing independent schools. Now, the Labour Party think that they've got a wedge issue here. It seems that, on balance, the majority of the country agree with them that they want to whack taxes on these schools. But it is a bit of an interesting one, because it's something that Tony Blair and Gordon Brown never went for. They didn't want to touch that sort of class warfare, because they knew that there were a certain set of sort of just about managing middle-class parents in this country that scrimp and save and send their children, and of course those on bursaries and scholarships and all the rest of it. It's an interesting thing for the Labour Party to have lent into this argument this week. It shows that perhaps they're being a bit more radical, wanting to show a bit more leg to the left wing of the party than Tony Blair ever did.
OK. Tom, thank you very much indeed. On that, Gary got in touch earlier on, said the Tories are traitors to the British people, and I was saying, I think that's a bit strong.
Yeah.
Anthony says, I believe Tory MPs are traitors to their members. Broken promises, and particularly with Conservative MPs forgetting the foundation of the party.
Alex says the same thing, more or less. I agree that calling the Tories traitors might be going a bit far. However, they are very definitely guilty of a dereliction of duty. We are poorer, unhappy and anything but safe.
And Jeff says the Red Wall vote will move back from the Tories. They promised a levelling up of the North, but have done nothing.
Yeah.
Well,
it's interesting hearing that man in Chester as well say levelling up's just words.
Yes, got to walk the walk, as he put it. Well, maybe he's absolutely right. Let us know what you think. GBviews at gbnews.uk.
It's 7:14. Let's bring you up to date with the rest of today's top stories. And the Defence Secretary says the Army has been neglected for the last 20 years. Ben Wallace made the comments in an interview with The Sun, a week after the Chancellor announced the defence budget will remain at least 2% of GDP. And he said £24 billion is being invested into the Army's equipment programme between now and the end of 2030, but that the Army needs to catch up.
The number of children unable to afford lunch has risen in more than half of England's state schools, according to the Sutton Trust. 54% of teachers responding also said children were being dropped off at school without warm clothing. The charities criticised the government for ignoring pleas to widen eligibility for free school meals in the last budget.
And Cornwall is to benefit from a £360 million devolution deal under new government plans. The proposed deal, which will require local consent and parliamentary approval, would give the county a locally elected mayor and a greater say over transport budgets, building and several other areas. The government's calling the deal a landmark settlement.
You've just reminded me of Gordon Brown, where you say devolution. Is it
Devolution.
Devolution, because he always used to put like an extra L in it somewhere, though.
Devolution.
And sort of got his tongue wrapped round
What do you think I should say? Devolution?
Well, no, it's up to you. I think
Devolve.
it's either
Say
or.
devolve.
But it's just...
Don't say devolve.
Just reminded me of Gordon Brown. Devolution.
Oh.
There you go. And he also said billions, £1 billion or whatever.
Yes, I remember him saying that.
Which is probably technically correct, but I don't understand why. Yeah. There you go, just a blast from the past.
Whenever I think of Cornwall, there was a particularly lovely MP from Cornwall, and I'm trying to remember his name now.
Oh, lovely.
Sadly, no, I'll think of his name in a minute, but he was absolutely gorgeous, and I always think of him. Sadly, he died early, and it was very, very sad, terrible tragedy. But I think he was liberal. He was a liberal. I'll think of his name in a minute. But I always think of him when I mention Cornwall.
We shall find out who it is. Now, it's the sort of hot topic of the morning, sadly. The Netflix trailer for Harry and Meghan's behind-the-scenes docu-series was released last night as the Prince of Wales tours the US city of Boston. The trailer has never-before-seen private photographs of the couple, with them saying it's time for people to hear their side of the story.
No one sees what's happening behind the closed doors. I had to do everything I could to protect my family.
Honestly,
Says it all, doesn't it?
speechless.
Yeah, well, let's see what former royal correspondent Nicholas Owen makes of all this morning.
Good morning.
I mean, this is bombshell stuff, isn't it?
Well, the timing, everything about it. I mean, that's that last shot, isn't it, of Harry with his head back on the back of the sofa or settee, or whatever. What do we call it? A sofa or a settee? Here we go again. All sorts of words confused in one's mind. And I think a lot of us feel the same way. You know, oh my goodness, what's going to happen now? Extraordinary altogether. What can one say? There's the documentary itself. The thing that's got me going is apparently Netflix are paying them, it is said, $100 million, which is about 85 million quid at the moment, isn't it? What an astonishing amount of money in itself. And then there's the book to come as well. And there's all the fuss going on after the Buckingham Palace ruckus the other day over the Lady Susan Hussey and so on. There's almost too much to cope with, chaps. I mean, where do we start?
Where do you start?
How do we pick it? How do we pick it apart, and what does it really?
Well, in terms of Harry and Meghan, they're destroying their family. Who is it? Which paper had it right? Oh, here you go, The Star, as Anne was pointing out earlier on. Publicity-shy couple share most intimate secrets with 8 billion people. This is a couple who wanted their privacy.
Yes.
Right, and they're sharing everything, saying we've got our story to tell, and it's going to be damaging to the rest of the royal family.
Oh, it certainly is, yes. The quote, so many bits and pieces flying about, as we were saying. One thing I was interested in, Prince Harry says, I had to do everything I could to protect my family. Now, in some ways, you think to yourself, actually, which bit of the family is he talking about? But it's quite clear he just means himself and his wife and their children. And he's decided to throw away the privacy thing altogether and open those curtains completely. And, yeah, that seems to me to be a very sad... And the trouble is with these things, it's like any family, isn't it? It's very easy to open doors like that. Very, very easy. Terribly difficult to pull back from them once you go further down the road. And that, I think, is the very sad thing here. There's been no sort of diplomacy attached to their side of this story at all. And there's Buckingham Palace staggering along to catch up with so many things, trying to do the right thing, you know, rushing out statements. And, you know, should they have acted quite so precipitately when it came to the business of that interchange in Buckingham Palace the other day involving Lady Hussey and so on? It's very hard, I think, people of my generation perhaps, and people who have longer memories of things that have happened to the royal family down many, many years. Memories only seems a short time ago. I was sitting in this studio talking to you two about the death of Queen Elizabeth and all the things that was going to mean to us. In comes King Charles. And now we deal with this.
Do you think that some of their attitude may be even hardened because the Queen is now dead and because Harry's dad is now king and Harry's brother, Prince of Wales? Maybe they feel they can actually be even more pointed in the things they say because they're not offending Her Majesty?
There could be, I think, an element of that, certainly. You remember that when it came to the book that we still have to look forward to as well, and we're promised bombshell revelations in that, aren't we? It was said then that Harry was terribly keen to get the proofs back. Is that the right expression we use these days? Please let me have the back. I think I said some things in there that I perhaps shouldn't about my grandmother. Maybe now he does feel he's off the leash with that. It's always hard to know with these people.
Do they realise, I wonder, I mean, because they are removed from a lot of things, do they realise how they seem to be just entirely burning their bridges. I mean, not only with family members, but with the British public.
Yeah, they seem to have decided that America is their future, as you say. And I think it often gets forgotten that our perspective from this country on what's going on, it's very unusual to hear many people saying, oh, I think Meghan, I think she's got a point there, and Harry, yes. Most of the things we hear and people say in this studio and so on, and you talk to people, are against them, if you like. Very different in the United States. Very, very different over there, the perception of how this family have settled in to the American way of life, giving that, the interview to Oprah Winfrey in the first place. That's like American royalty in itself, remember. So I think they have decided it's the States for them. It's that they're going to be on that side of the world mostly. That's where they want to concentrate. That's where they're going to make an awful lot of money,
Should the King remove their titles?
Should he? I very much doubt he will. Don't forget that it's been confirmed again that Harry is in line to step in if things are needed, if the King can't, for whatever reason, carry out duties and hand things on slightly.
Yeah, but the King's increased the number of...
he has.
What are they called?
The expression for it.
Yes, but
deputies.
Yes, sort of stand-ins. He's increased the number by taking on Prince Edward and Princess Anne, which means the likelihood of him ever having to rely on Harry is diminished.
Absolutely, but not taking him out of the list.
No.
Not taking him out of the list. I can't see that happening at all. From what one knows of Charles, our King, and his attitude to his family, is that... a bit like, I think, his mother. Just keep on going, take the long view, keep them in, keep going. I mean, look at the way that our late Queen clearly stuck with Andrew. Clearly did. I mean, there's no doubt about it.
She removed all his, honorary titles and things, didn't she?
Yeah, a lot of them went, except for
duties.
being a Vice Admiral, remember?
Is that right? He continued to be a Vice Admiral?
Yeah, Vice Admiral. They couldn't remove that one for some reason. I can't quite remember.
There are always these protocols
There's
that
always
make
something.
things difficult.
But in terms of the personal relationship, Queen and Andrew, nothing affected that at all.
No, she loved him. She's his mum.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and you forgive a child everything, I suppose.
Well, I don't know whether you forgive them everything, but you never stop loving them. And she went to the extent of actually going out riding with him in Windsor Great Park, didn't she?
Yes.
The day after she had removed those titles from him.
Yes. So
she sort of was saying to the country, he's been a very bad boy and I have removed his titles, but I'm still his mother and I love him.
Absolutely.
And I imagine Charles must be going through that terrible dilemma himself at the moment.
Yes, but I can't see that there's... I would be amazed if we ever see a statement on the lines of, what you're suggesting. The King makes it clear that the Duke of Sussex is no longer no longer regarded as part of the hierarchy. I don't think that would ever happen. Removal of duties and, they don't have any royal duties anyway now. I think that would be most unlikely.
It depends what's in the docu-series and the book.
They could take away the title of Duke of Sussex, couldn't they?
Well, indeed,
You're
yes.
beginning to sound as though you think that's...
I do think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
No, go on, just briefly.
Well, just briefly about this business about Sussex. I was down in Brighton having lunch with chums from Sussex the other day, and somebody who was very much involved in the one visit that Meghan has ever made as Duchess of Sussex, and the Duke, and since they were named as that, the only time they were ever there, a very, very brief visit round the place. And I said to this person, well, what was it like to actually be with them? And he said, well, I'll tell you one thing, Meghan was in charge.
Yeah.
So I leave you with that thought when we talk about all this.
Yes. Well,
I think so very much, yes, it does. I mean, you only have to look at that trailer. It's about Meghan, isn't it? It's all about Meghan.
Well, I'm saying no more about it. I'll end up in trouble. Nicholas, thank you. We'll see you a little bit later on.
Indeed.
It's a shame, isn't it, that we have to feel that way, that, it's just so sad, and I wish it wasn't happening.
Yeah. Look, we've got much more to come, including shock exits from the World Cup. Ada McGee's going to be here.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Deebs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me! And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
There's a guy who went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
"7:30, this is Breakfast with Stephen and Anne. I just want to mention Gary. Gary's got back in touch. Morning, Gary. He says, sorry if I upset you with a traitor comment. I would love to see you both in Plymouth. You didn't upset us at all, Gary. It's just thought it was a bit harsh.
Yeah.
But we'd love to come to Plymouth. It would be lovely.
Yeah.
I've only been to Plymouth a couple of times, so I'd love to head back down. I like to get around the country. We've got a wonderful country. I love to go and visit various parts of it.
You have to get a big touring bus like they do when they do elections.
Yeah, battle bus.
A battle bus.
GB News battle
Yeah,
bus.
that would be
the boss is
terrific.
listening.
Yeah.
Sounds good. So, Gary, no offence taken there, Gary. You're perfectly entitled.
Weird
to be
Christmas
here.
presents. Elaine
yes.
says my husband once gave me an angle grinder for Christmas.
Really?
I think that must have been because he wanted one. She said, I wondered what on earth it was for ages. It was a lovely square box and weighed very heavy.
Well, it would.
Well, yeah.
Well, hello, you're very good at your angle grinding. Stephen Bracknell says, mine was an ornament I got one Christmas and then got the same ornament the following Christmas from the same person.
Dodgy. If you're going to recycle, you've got to make a note of who you got it from.
But I did that with my brother. I bought him a really nice shirt. He likes his sort of fancy shirts. I bought him a really nice shirt for Christmas 2 years ago or 3 years ago. And then the next Christmas, I bought him the same shirt.
But yes, that's all right, because if he liked it, it's good to have two.
No, I had to swap it out. You can't have two shirts exactly the same
Well, I
pattern.
don't think you can.
Very fancily patterned.
Oh,
So I swapped it out, but I did do that. I'd just forgotten I'd bought it for him.
Helen in Cheltenham morning. Now, Cheltenham's another nice place for us to go.
Oh, yes, please.
Many years ago, my husband, who I've been separated from for more than 20 years, gave me a Delia Smith cookbook for Christmas. And then for my 30th, he gave me 2 random bottles of perfume I never use. His heart was in the right place, though.
Well, that's it. It's the thought that counts.
Not
I do believe...
just the thought.
Oh, no, I think
Try and get it right as well as the thought.
Well, yes, but it's the thought, I think. Anyway, look, Aidan's here. Take us through the sport. Morning, Aidan.
Morning. Delia Smith gave me a cookbook once.
She gave you a cookbook?
She did, yeah. I was up at Norwich City doing a review of her restaurant.
Was she a bit drunk?
No, she does have a little bit of form for that, I believe, from many years ago. But no, she was fantastic. She was relaunching her restaurant. I know she was launching her restaurant after a period of closure at Norwich City Football Club.
There was a restaurant inside the football
Indeed,
club.
yeah, there was. And then that was in December 2019. She relaunched it, having spent a big lot of money, and people got in contact with me and said, come and do a piece on it. And then 2 months later, it was closed again.
Oh,
of course, wasn't it? Yeah, it was called The Yellows. And on Plymouth as well. I used to work in Plymouth quite a bit. Just I've been listening to the show the last 5 minutes or so.
Excellent. Well, you've been sat there. That's why you've also, my producer tells me, just eaten up 50% of your time.
Oh, goodness me.
So we better talk goals.
Good job it wasn't a big day yesterday. But, Germany and Belgium, 2 big beasts out of the World Cup. Now, for Belgium, it's a big thing because it's their golden generation. A bit like England's golden generation of 15 years ago, just failed to get over the line when it really mattered. Some really big players failing to deliver on the big day. Romelu Lukaku missing 4 chances. Eden Hazard approaching his 30s. Kevin De Bruyne, fabulous players for their club. It looks as if this generation is going to go unfulfilled. Their manager, Roberto Martinez, he won the FA Cup with Wigan back in 2013 before managing Everton. He resigned after the game. Rumours of infighting in the squad. Reports beforehand. And then Germany, of course, 1 point from 3 matches. And they got eliminated last night. That means they've gone out in the group stage in 2 consecutive World Cups, and in between that was a lacklustre appearance in the Euros as well. And this is after winning.
Does that improve our chances, though?
Well, it does. I mean, look, you have to say that you've removed 2 really big nations. I mean, they're a threat. Belgium and Germany, in the last 10 years, especially with Belgium, have been a threat at every tournament. They may not have got over the line many times, but for England, there have always been a problem, those sides in big events. So, yeah, you have to say that's a good thing for England. However, you look at the Asian sides like Japan, you look at the African sides like Senegal, who England are playing on Sunday. When I was a kid, they were joke nations in terms of football.
They're not now, are they?
Not anymore. They've got top players playing in Europe, and they're going to be a formidable opponent on Sunday. I can assure you of that.
Japan beat Spain.
Spain.
Or did they?
Well, they did. There was a VAR controversy, but, the ball... I mean, you can see the picture there for the benefit of our radio listeners. We can see the ball crossing over the line if it wasn't for... Oh, yeah, we can just see...
Take out the strap.
We can see the ball over the line. Now, it did cross the line, clearly. Now, VAR, we're still talking about VAR, where the VAR was meant to eliminate these controversies, and yet we're still saying... I mean, that clearly... Surely you can see that's over the line, right? So Japan score a goal there, which eliminates Germany. So... You could say it's a little bit of payback for 2010 when Frank Lampard's goal against Germany crossed the line quite clearly by about a foot, and Germany went through. England failed at the second stage in Japan on that occasion. But yeah, look at that. I mean, as I say, for our radio listeners can't see it, but the ball is clearly over the line there, and the VAR that's been looked at and on monitors in the privacy of a studio, and someone's decided that ball is on the line, and therefore it's crossed over. Japan score, and they're the fine margins that made the difference between success and failure in tournaments. England have fallen victim to that in the second phase back in 2010.
So who are we going to play on Sunday against Senegal?
We're playing against the African champions.
No. Who's in our team?
So it's our team. Sorry.
If we don't have Rashford and if we don't have Foden after Tuesday.
Well, look, I think there's a case for dropping Raheem Sterling. I don't think he's played well for England in this tournament. Don't forget me wrong, doesn't mean he can't contribute later on if England were to get through. We can't jump the gun, but I find it difficult to see how after 2 goals, and Stephen, you said you even watched the game.
I did. It's not like me at all.
But you saw some two fine goals from Rashford.
Oh, yeah.
He's a man who's delivering at this tournament. 3 goals now, and he's only started 1 game. I find it difficult. I think he's made the case irresistible for now for Gareth Southgate to drop him. Harry Kane, I don't think you can really drop. He's a man for a big occasion. Again, he's a player just like Sterling. Really, he's a player who's not let England down on the big occasion. And so, look, it's great that England have got options, but each team poses a different threat. And we've not faced anything like Senegal so far in this tournament. If we get past Senegal, then it looks like it's going to be France in the quarter-final. So it's going to be horses for courses all the way throughout the tournament. Gareth Southgate, you have to say, with those big beasts who've been going out of the tournament and all the struggles those big countries have had in the groups, England have sailed through by comparison, and I think Gareth Southgate deserves credit for that.
OK. Aidan, thank you.
Nice to see you.
And you.
It's going to get more and more exciting, that, isn't it, actually?
It is. You never know. This might be the year. Look, we've got more to come for you, including a look at the newspapers in a couple of minutes.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons? I don't believe in prisons. I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere. Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 7:41. Good morning to you. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Anne.
Yeah, it's time to go inside the papers now. And joining us this morning, senior reporter from the I newspaper, Benjamin Butterworth, and broadcaster Liz Kershaw. Welcome to you both. Let's get going, Benjamin, with the cost of living crisis.
Yeah, I mean, cost of living crisis we're all feeling and used to, but this is a story in today's I newspaper that schools are facing energy bill rises of 300%. So the man that runs Oasis Trust, which is a chain of 52 schools across the country...
Oh, that's Steve Chalk, isn't it?
I think so. Yes, you're right. Yeah. Correct. Well done.
Oh, thank you.
And he says that the average cost of the energy bills in those 50 schools has gone from £112,000 to £356,000. And he's warning that something serious is going to have to happen because they're going to lay off teaching assistants and not hire new teachers that they otherwise would have because they simply can't make ends meet. And I think this... I mean, we know the seriousness of the problem we're facing, but when it knocks on to things like kids not being able to get their education, you know, and then you've got all the extra problems that children are coming into school cold.
Energy companies must have... They do what they call corporate and social responsibility, all these big companies. They must have a responsibility when it comes to education to say, right, we're gonna give you half your bill back, or whatever it may be.
I mean, I think something like that has to happen. You know, Reverend Steve Chalk points out that they're having to, like, double class sizes. They're having to get people in massive rooms so that they have fewer spaces to heat, simply to make ends meet. And I think, you know, the idea that people won't be getting a basic education because schools can't afford to put the heating on, it is really, you know, an indictment of the situation we're in. It's pretty awful.
Yeah.
Why does it take somebody like him to highlight this? Why isn't a government minister already on top of this problem?
The Secretary of State for Education, possibly?
Well, you'd think so.
I just think you've got all these stories of people's energy bills being, you know, tripled, quadrupled, whatever. I bet you they're all on direct debit. And what happens is they estimate, don't they? The energy suppliers estimate, and then they've got the power to just hike the payment that they take out of your bank account. Historically,
you can adjust it.
Yeah, I know, but historically they've always done that because when my mum died, we could claim back literally a couple of £1,000 living alone. They've been taking massive amounts off her unnecessarily. I've always refused, and I just send in my meter readings and I pay what I've used. And I have to say, I opened the bill, dual fuel, British Gas, very nervously this week, and I had a pleasant surprise.
It was only £5,000.
Yeah, because we're just paying for what we use, and I've, you know, turning the lights off, using an air fryer, only having a fire in one room and not putting the boiler on.
I think
and I got me £66 off each
I just
bill.
sort of think with that, I mean, it's if you've got the spare cash to levy it out, but I think I quite like the direct debit because it means I'm paying more. I'm paying the same in the summer as I do in the winter, even though I'm using more fuel in the winter.
I suppose it levels it out, but then you just budget for it. You just budget. But I do think we'll find that people who are watching now, and I might include the schools, will finally find out that the actual energy companies have been banking all their money.
Well, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Let's hope so, because the prices of oil and gas are coming down.
Well, they are.
Yeah. Well, they are.
Let's have a look at the Times and the royal race crisis.
OK, so young woman goes to the palace and finds herself feeling interrogated, out of place, uncomfortable, traumatised. I know the feeling. There is no word for what I've experienced since I dared to venture from Leeds down to London to seek my fortune. I had no concept of the prejudice and discrimination against Northerners. And there's no word for it. So I've always tried to think of a word for it. You can't call it racist, but... Anyway, I've been to receptions at royal palaces and I've had some very funny questions asked because it's not what I look like. It's as soon as I open my mouth, then it's, oh, where are you from? As much as say, how very dare you have the cheek to be here today? What's your justification for being invited? Oh, well, work for the BBC. Do you? So I've got, you know, explicit examples of that. And some of, you know, I can laugh about them now. For instance, when I first got onto Radio 1, which was part of the BBC at the time, run by Lady Susan Hussey's husband, Marmaduke Hussey. This was an organisation where you were told women are biologically incapable of driving a radio studio desk, where we were told, no, you can't do a daytime show because the audience doesn't want a woman keeping them company, they want a man, you know, because they fancy the guys. You know, all this stuff I had to put up with. I had a very well-known news programme host. I walked into a room, he was talking to Angus Deaton. They were laughing. I said, what are you laughing about? He said, oh, you wouldn't understand Kershaw, you know, public school, second name. Why not? Oh, well, we're just discussing our Oxbridge colleges. I said, how do you know I didn't go to Oxbridge? He goes, oh, you're so clearly red brick.
Yeah.
You know, I've had that all the night. And I went to the House of Lords once. I was having a lunch with a member of the House of Lords at his invitation. We were saving Six Music at the time, and suddenly this voice comes across the dining room. It wasn't very busy, the House of Lords dining room, and this voice went, excuse me, yeah, are you a northerner? I said, yes, I am. He said, I could tell because I have a friend from Bolton and you sound exactly the same. I said, I don't mean to be disrespectful, but I don't, because there are many different accents in the north. We're not all homogenised, we're not all... But I've had that all my life.
I know, and a lot of the newspapers today have interviewed particularly black women, who all say you're asked it nearly every day, wherever you go. Where are you from?
Yeah, but I get that.
It's a casual racism, or in your case, a casual prejudice that actually grates. And other people, like white people like me, have never experienced.
No.
But if you do experience that, and you experience it countless days, in and out, you're asked the same thing in this very patrician manner, it must really hurt.
But in her defence, I think she's very... I said earlier, I don't really believe in the elitism of this... hierarchy, you know, up to aristocracy and then royalty. But if she's lived in that, she would have been told, now you must show interest in people and ask them curious questions. And that's what she was doing. She encountered a woman who looked different because she was, not least, dressed differently. And, you know, she was probably making conversation, but I do it all the time.
When she asked, where are you from, and the answer was Hackney, she should have stopped there. But then she kept pushing, didn't she? And I can see why. She's 83. I can see why she just... But where are your people from?
Well, if somebody said to me, well, where are your people from? I'd quite proudly say Ireland, you know, originally.
But this is the thing, you know, my grandparents came to this country from Canada, but no one's ever asked me, where are you from?
No.
And I, you know, many of the black community, their grandparents were the people who came here, just like my grandparents are the ones that came here, but strangely, no one ever thinks to ask me that.
I think that's...
It's very
away from...
Hold on.
But just general curiosity... Oh, sorry.
So when she gets going...
Well, when you're with me, you get more northern, don't you?
I do. Well, yeah. I have my telephone voice that I work with, and then my real voice. Then my real voice. We are out of time, Liz Benjamin. That's it. We'll see you later. Now, over the last few years, the pandemic and rising costs have kept some of us working longer than we wanted, but apparently retiring at the age of 68 instead of 60 could make you better off.
That's according to the finance giant Standard Life. Well, joining us to tell us more about this is pensions consultant Hilary Salt. A very good morning to you. Is this true? Working longer will mean we're better off in our older years?
Yes, well, working longer has a kind of triple whammy effect on your pension. We're talking here generally about defined contribution pensions, where you have a pensions pot. So the three things that happen when you work longer are, first of all, you leave your money invested, so it tends to earn more returns. Secondly, because you're still earning and you're still contributing, you're making that pot a bit bigger. And thirdly, and this is where the kind of almost actuarial fairy dust comes in, because you're working a bit longer, you have a fewer years in retirement that you have to spread that pot over. So, you know, if you work an extra 5 years, that's 5 years less where you're drawing down from that pot. So your annual income that you can draw down from it goes up. So for all those three reasons, working longer makes your pension bigger.
Yeah, well, yeah, and that all makes a lot of common sense. But as you say, it's 5 years less, having a nice time.
Well, I think what most of the studies show is that good work is actually good for you. I appreciate that, many people are in work where it is kind of stressful and difficult, but that's a problem with work rather than a problem with pensions.
Well...
Yeah, do you think that actually, I mean, I'm of that age group that's taking this decision, and certainly amongst my friends, they have all more or less sort of sadly come to the conclusion that they're going to have to work at least until they're 70. Are you coming across that more and more now?
I think maybe not as far as 70. So the state pension now is 66. It's going up to 67. The amount you get from the state pension about £9,500 a year. So, it's an amount that some people are surprised it's still at about that level. So we are seeing people certainly working towards when their state pension is, which is perhaps a bit longer than they did when state pensions were lower. But don't forget, we've also got this other thing going on, the Great Resignation, where we're finding that lots of people are actually leaving work earlier, perhaps because some of the things you've talked about on the programme earlier today, that people are not getting the care and attention they need from the NHS, so they're not well enough to work. Some people finding that different ways of working don't quite suit them. So there's a big mix. Different people are certainly reacting to the world today in different ways.
I mean, the frightening thing with all of this, though, is how much you put in your pension pot. And when you look at the amounts, they seem to add up to, pretty astronomical figures at times. When you work out how much you're actually going to get out of that, it's terrifyingly small.
Yeah, so these numbers from Standard Life, they say that if you contribute your whole life, the minimum amount that's required to auto enrolment, you might be looking at a pot of around about £200,000 at age 60, about £300,000 at age 68 for the reasons that we talked about earlier. But when you think about spreading that over the period that you're going to live for, you might live, perhaps 20 years from 68 up to 88. When you spread that £300,000, you don't get that much as an annual amount. You're looking about something like £15,000. That's probably not a bad income when you add on the basic state pension to that. But remember that all these figures assume that you're working for the whole of your life. You don't take any time out of the workforce to care for a family. You don't take any time when you're not contributing to a pension scheme, perhaps because you're doing things like paying off student loan or paying for your mortgage. So, even these figures, I think they're perhaps a little bit misleading because people generally don't do that, don't contribute throughout their whole careers. The other thing, perhaps just to mention, if you look at what's happened over the past year with bonds, people might have had quite a good pot a year ago, but if they've invested that largely in bonds, which people tend to do as they approach retirement, that might have lost about a third of its value over the past year.
Crumbs. Harsh news.
Doesn't bear thinking about.
It really doesn't.
Look, Hilary, we've got to leave it there, sadly, but really good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed.
Thank you. Right, we're heading towards the weather now. More to come from our GB News People's Poll. All the politics and, of course, the Meghan and Harry saga. That's all coming up in the next hour.
Hello, a very good morning to you. It's Aidan McGibbon here from the Met Office. Foggy for many of us once again this morning, but brighter skies are on their way later. Unlike yesterday when the fog didn't clear in places, today the fog will lift because what's happening is the isobars across the map are now tightening up around the periphery of a large area of high pressure to the east, and that will bring an increased easterly breeze through the day. So that's going to make it feel colder through the next few days, but it will also help to lift the mist and fog that we've got around first thing. So after poor visibility on the roads during the morning, the fog does lift by the afternoon. The easterly breeze is still bringing a fair amount of cloud in. I don't think there'll be much sunshine, but there will be some sun coming through Northern Ireland, West Wales, Cornwall, as well as parts of North East England. There'll also be some showers into the east coast of England, but it will feel cold with the wind, 5 to 9 Celsius. And when you add on the wind, well, you can take off a few degrees for the wind chill effect. A lot of cloud for Scotland and some patchy rain clearing the far north of Scotland, but otherwise it's mostly a dry picture. And for many places, it's a fine end to the week. There'll be no fog forming on Friday night, but there will be a lot of cloud feeding in and further showers into eastern and central areas. Clear spells to the west will lead to a touch of frost in places first thing Saturday, but the frost won't be widespread because of the extent of the cloud and because of that breeze helping to stir things up. It will be particularly gusty along the English Channel coast as well as the North Sea coast, and both these areas will feel cold because of the wind direction. The wind will also bring in further showers into the east, and also there'll be a spell of more persistent light rain affecting the northwest of Scotland. It'll be mild in the far northwest of Scotland, 9 to 10 degrees here. Elsewhere, 7 degrees typically across the UK. And when you add on the wind, it'll feel more like 4 or 5 degrees on Saturday and feeling more like 0 to 3 degrees on Sunday as that wind picks up and we get even colder air. But at this stage, any showers will be composed of rain.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dubes & Co. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Dubes & Co.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by 2 of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Labour has won the Chester by-election in the first public vote since Boris Johnson and Liz Truss left number 10.
Good morning. It's 8 o'clock on Friday, the 2nd of December. This is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Anne. Here are the top stories you need to know about today.
Labour's won the Chester by-election, delivering a major blow to Rishi Sunak in his first electoral test as Prime Minister. The winner, Samantha Dixon, who retained the seat for Labour, said it sent a clear message to the government.
From your opinion on the Prime Minister to who you would vote for in the next general election, we'll reveal the latest results from today's GB News People's Poll.
And as Harry and Meghan released a trailer for their much-anticipated Netflix docu-series, we're in Boston as William and Catherine visit locals and attempt to put the recent race storm behind them.
And we'd love to know your views on all of that. As ever, you can join in any of our discussions by emailing us gbviews@gbnews.uk.
So let's start with the news then, that Labour has won the City of Chester by-election overnight. Former councillor now, Samantha Dixon, retained the seat for Labour and described the City of Chester as a bellwether constituency.
It is, of course, a blow for Rishi Sunak in his first electoral test since becoming PM. Our North West of England reporter, Sophie Reaper, has been finding out more.
Yesterday, the people of Chester took to the polls in order to select a new MP, and it was Labour candidate Samantha Dixon who was celebrating in the early hours of the morning. Now, it's worth saying that the reason behind this by-election is because former Labour MP Christian Matheson was forced to step down after allegations of serious sexual misconduct. Now, the result here in Chester doesn't come as much of a surprise given the last few months in politics, but what has come as a surprise is that the Tories have suffered their worst defeat here since 1832. Labour candidate Sam Dixon took over 17,000 votes, that's 61%. She also took almost 11,000 votes more than the Conservative candidate. Now, I was here in the constituency yesterday speaking to voters, and they told me, the majority of them anyway, that they were planning on voting for Labour. So the result didn't really come as much of a surprise. But what they did tell me was what they were concerned about were the issues facing Chester. Here's some of what they had to tell me.
I'd like to see the town a lot cleaner than it is, and also there are too many empty shops and they need to be filled.
Immigration. What about immigration?
I don't want any more coming into this country.
And why not?
Because we can't afford to feed our own, never mind the immigrants.
To improve the environment, to unfortunately reduce the dependency on motor cars.
They've got to ensure that rents and rates are right for the town, so because it's a leisure and commercial centre. So those have got to be sorted out so that the shops are filled. There are too many voids in this town.
Well, there's so much that needs doing, but I don't think they'll bother doing it because one party's the same as the other. We're not being levelled up here at all. It's just words levelling up. They don't carry out what they say they're going to do. They just talk the talk, they don't walk the walk.
Well, as we've just heard, there's plenty for the new Labour MP in Chester to be getting on with, Sam Dixon. But I'm sure, given the circumstances, she'll just be pleased, and the Labour Party as a whole will just be pleased that they've managed to retain this crucial seat here in the constituency of Chester.
Sophie Reaper there. Well, if you're in that area, let us know what you think. gbviews@gbnews.uk. But it's time now to have a wider look at what the UK is thinking in the GB News People's Poll.
So let's see what everybody's been saying. We asked certain questions, asked about the level of immigration in the UK. There we are. 54% of people in the poll said it's too high. 13% said it's about right.
Over half of those in the poll think William and Catherine, the Prince and Princess of Wales, are favoured abroad. 8% think the King and Queen. 7% Harry and Meghan.
But let's come to the politics. When asked who they would vote for in the next general election, 46% of people in this poll say they would vote for Labour, 21% for Tories.
Whether we should have a new anti-immigration party, 33% say they either completely or somewhat agree with that.
And in terms of opinions on Rishi Sunak himself, 43% in the poll hold an unfavourable view of the Prime Minister.
And will you vote in the next general election? 54% say they definitely will. 12% say they definitely won't.
Well, joining us now, former Chief Secretary to the Treasury, David Mellor. Hello there.
Good
Yeah, not very nice reading for Rishi Sunak. He's had no bounce of popularity since he came in. There doesn't seem to be any vote of confidence in him at all at the moment.
No, and I'm sorry, because I think he is a cut above both late Boris and also, that brief interim Prime Minister, Liz Truss. But I think that the problem for him is he hasn't been careful enough not to clutch to his bosom the diseased bodies of previous administrations. And some of the people that he has brought back into government are merely causing him a lot of trouble.
Who? Yeah.
Well, Suella Braverman, although I think she's quite good. I think it's very dangerous if people have run into a lot of trouble in previous jobs, and you sort of bring them back as if it doesn't matter. Well, it does matter.
Well, the problem is this is the problem that they're going to face when you've been in power for so long. Everyone's got a bit of a history. Everyone's got some experience. Everyone's got a little bit of history. There's no clean slate, is there?
But the problem is that his government doesn't look strong. And, and that is because politics is not strong. And the quality of people, say, that Mrs. Thatcher had available to her, he doesn't have. I also think he's got to look strong and not look weak. I mean, reading one or two of the things today about, for instance, changes he wants to make in these rules that stop hostile environments being created in universities where people can't speak their minds. And apparently he wants to water it down. Yeah, if I had half an hour with him, I would say to him, dear Rishi, listen to an older, not necessarily wiser, but an older man who, I was a minister in Margaret Thatcher's government for 9 of her 11 years. You don't get anywhere by backing off. You've got to say, this is what I want to do. This is where I stand. I can do no other. And she was, close up, very unreasonable person. I've said this before, but I think she despised me even more than my mother did. And that was very depressing for me.
Oh, David.
But I was a useful idiot for her. And what I did to her in my own small way, I was the right person to ask to do it. It wasn't, there weren't huge things, but stuff in the Home Office where it really mattered. And I think she would stick by you if she thought you were up to it. But if you didn't do what she wanted, I remember she once literally pinned me up against the wall in the cabinet room and told me from the space of a few inches, it was almost like Alec Ferguson's hairdryer, where I had got it wrong. But she did all right. She will go down in history, even though she got things like the poll tax wrong, as a great Prime Minister. Obviously, Boris will not go down in history as a great Prime Minister. Obviously, Liz Truss was not a great Prime Minister. If Rishi Sunak is going to be a great Prime Minister, he's got to chart his own course and not look as though, between reasonable and deeply unreasonable, there's a middle way which only makes you quite unreasonable.
We were talking to someone from the Orthodox Conservative group earlier on in the week. And he said, which I thought, the name of the group says it all in some respects. And he said, doesn't want the Tories to go into opposition, but he thinks they need to go into opposition.
Yes, it's what, funny enough, Peter Morrison, another former, rather controversial, former member for the city of Chester, he at one point was talking about the Conservatives years ago, needing a good scrub with a hard brush. And, I think that they do. The Conservatives have got to prove they are worthy of the trust of the public.
There must be some young talent waiting to come through, mustn't there?
Well, they better find it quite fast. But also maybe some older talent consigned prematurely to the back benches. But one thing is certain. I don't think... Is it inevitable the Tories will lose? On these figures, which are very interesting, it's very difficult for them not to lose. But they have one big advantage, and that is that the Labour Party is not any longer the party of Tony Blair. You see, it's hard to imagine because Tony Blair's become discredited the way all politicians do. Tony Blair was a formidable force in opposition against John Major, as I saw only too clearly. And I even had a senior Conservative cabinet minister come up to me and say, before Blair became, you must meet this Tony Blair. He's going to save the Labour Party. And he did.
But you see, that was young talent coming through. When John Smith sadly died, he and Gordon Brown were these two very young, dynamic politicians who had a message, and it was a message of... It was a positive message. And we don't seem to be getting many positive messages from this government,
but
do we?
I would say that, you know, the Labour Party, it's like a puddle, you know, very wide but not very deep, the support for the Labour Party. So, I mean, it's not hopeless for the Conservatives. But to be honest, do the Conservatives really deserve another term in office? It's not easy to say
Is it good for any government to be in that long?
No. And it's a defect in the political system that we are put with large chunks of one-party rule. But I think that Jeremy Corbyn made it inevitable that the Tories would be in for a long time. Now he has gone. I think the Labour Party are electable. If the Labour Party are elected, why wouldn't people elect them? Rishi Sunak's got to give the country a good reason to keep him in. My feeling about Rishi Sunak, and I would have voted for him, by the way, against Liz Truss and all the rest of it, I think he's a clever man. But what I'm not sure that he is a strong man. I'm not sure that he is, you know, a conviction politician. See, where Margaret Thatcher got away with it, I made that joke about my mother. And probably both Thatcher and my mum were actually better towards me than I deserved, and not as bad as I laugh about. But the point is, there was something about her being a mum to the voters, and the voters thought, well, she's telling us like it is, just like my mum used to do, but we may not like it, but we can agree with it. Rishi Sunak plainly can't be their mum, but can he be strong enough? I think what people want from politicians is strength and conviction. And are they getting strength or conviction? It's early days, but Rishi doesn't seem to be delivering that. And if he doesn't deliver it...
look, away from politics, just briefly, because I'm going to talk about the royal stuff a little bit later on as well. However, all this royal race row business, you know Lady Hussey,
I know Sue Hussey very well, and I am desolate because she has served the Queen, with whom she was the closest friend, I think, the Queen, for 60 years. I don't know what happened in that conversation. They're supposed to put people at their ease, but also to get people to talk about themselves.
Is she just a bit out of her depth, a little bit in modern times?
Maybe, but I tell you one thing. She'd be mortified by a lot of this stuff. For instance, let me just give you a quick Sue Hussey anecdote. A Jewish friend of mine, same age as me, his mother left Germany just before the war when her husband, even before the war, died in a concentration camp. She came to England, made her home ultimately in London, and was about to be 100. But for some reason, although she never went back to Germany except once, she had to go back and sign a document. But she got off the plane, went and signed the document and went off again and stayed in Germany a total of 1.5 hours. But she never changed her nationality. And he came to me and said, my mother, oh, it would be so wonderful if she could get a letter from the Queen. But of course she won't because she's not a British national. And I went to Sue Hussey and I said, Sue, what about this? And she smiled at me and said, let's see, shall we? And she got her letter.
From the Queen, even though she wasn't a British national?
She wasn't. She got her letter from the Queen. And Sue is a kind and, I think, rather wonderful person. And I cannot bear, I mean, obviously you've written to her and all the rest of it, we'll see her. I cannot bear the thought that everything she has done is put in jeopardy by this. And let's face it, whatever happened, I think one or two people have got an incentive to blow it up out of all proportion and are doing so. And the other thing about the royals, I think one doesn't have to expect any loyalty from the royal family. Let's be quite clear about this. They threw her under the bus at the first opportunity. That's not nice. But
Well, what
they
else
probably
could they
felt,
do?
well, that's the point, you know.
It's an impossible situation, isn't it?
It is. And, of course, someone up there does play around with us. I mean, the only times I believe in God is when I think he's a mischief maker.
Yeah.
Because how could it be that at a time when Meghan and Harry are about to emerge again, this incident, from the last person on earth I would have expected such an incident to come from Sue, arises, all bearing on this ultra-sensitive subject of race.
Yeah.
I can't imagine how awfully upsetting it must be for her personally, because I can't imagine she would have offended deliberately in any way. She's 83.
Yes.
She's been a loyal servant to the Queen for so long and friend to the Queen. For her career, as it were, to end this way must be so upsetting.
And the Queen relied on her a great deal. They saw each other for hours every day, and the Queen was kept going by people who had known her for decades and who were able to provide the Queen with the support that she needed. The Queen didn't want bright young things and sharp. She wanted people she was familiar with who could help her continue to be, you know, the nation's favourite grandmother. And Sue Hussey was a key element in that. So I'm desolate at what has happened. Desolate. I really am.
David, good to see you this morning. Thank you very much indeed.
Yes, an interesting perspective on it, isn't it? Let us know what your thoughts are, because obviously it's a terribly, terribly sensitive situation, and you don't mean to demean anyone's side of the story at all. So go on, let us know your views on it. gbviews@gbnews.uk.
At 8:17, let's bring you up to date with the rest of the top stories this morning. And the average premium customers paid for private motor insurance in the last 4 months of this year was 2% higher than last year as vehicle repair costs increase. The Association of British Insurers says motorists typically paid £436 in the third quarter of 2022, a 3% increase compared with the second quarter of this year. It sounds very complicated, but it's costing you more, basically.
Yes. The government has announced tens of thousands of trees are going to be planted across the country in memory of the late Queen Elizabeth the Great. The Queen's Green Canopy tree planting initiative will be used, with communities able to plant thousands of trees in honour of the Queen. They're going to work with several partners to plant trees in over 60 locations.
So Elton John has been announced as the first headline act for Glastonbury next year. He said he couldn't be more excited, and there's no more fitting way to say goodbye to my British fans.
Goodbye?
You'll never say goodbye. Glastonbury organisers said it'll be the final UK show of Elton's last tour. How many farewell tours has he done now?
I don't know.
About 10.
And it always seems the headline act at Glastonbury is now getting into, you know, everybody's in their 70s at least.
Yeah, it's all the old acts, the classic
It is,
acts.
yeah. And they
There's
still
nothing
bring in
wrong with that.
they sell the tickets, don't they? My goodness.
Oh,
Anyway.
it's fabulous, isn't it? I have to say, we're talking about... I was just reminded because of all the sparkle on Elton's jacket and whatever in those pictures. Worst Christmas gifts...
Yes.
An Elton John jacket would be one of them, I should think. Marion says, my husband bought me the same bracelet 2 years running.
Well, at least he obviously liked it.
Yes,
and you can wear one on each wrist.
Penny in Watlington in Oxfordshire said, my husband gave me the Delia cookbook the first Christmas after I'd met him in 1993, and I was delighted. It's so well used now, it's held together with gaffer tape.
Oh.
There's something about those family
Those old
cookbooks,
yeah,
isn't there, where they're all just absolutely...
I've got I was given the Mary Berry Arga cookbook, and anyone who's ever had an Arga, you know it's like a Bible, the Mary Berry Arga cookbook. So that must have been sort of when I first started having a family, and it is brilliant on everything. You don't have to have an Arga to follow the recipes. It is brilliant on everything. I think it has to be. And so my copy is very, very dog-eared now, and all sorts of extra special pages fall out, and I've written bits on it. But it is the best cookbook in the world, I think.
I saw Mary Berry at the garden centre a few weeks ago. Not my local garden centre. She was wandering about with a few of her friends.
I suppose you would.
And you sit there going, oh, that's Mary Berry.
She's like an enormous superstar nowadays.
But she's... Tell you what, she looked very frail. I mean, she's well in her 80s, isn't she?
Yeah, she's very, very titchy. She's very small anyway.
Yeah, but
she's sort of got thinner, I think. Yes, and now looking her age. But
wonderful hair.
Yes,
let me tell you
she's
that.
learned that, hasn't she? Do you remember the first? I don't know whether you ever watched the first series of
I did.
Bake Off.
Yeah.
She glammed up over about the first 3 series, didn't she? Don't blame her. Wow,
No.
why not?
Mary Berry. No, it's quite interesting to see. Anyway. There you go. Now, there's lots to talk about in the world of politics, of course, because we've had the
overnight by-election in Chester.
City of Chester by-election, Labour retaining, but with a bigger majority.
Yeah,
They've got 61% of the vote. Now, that's substantial, of course. Let's see if we can talk to the Shadow Secretary of State for International Trade, Nick Thomas-Symonds, who joins us now. Fingers crossed. Good morning to you. Oh, there you are. Nice to see you. Look, it's got to be said, an impressive result for the Labour Party.
Well, first of all, good morning and lovely to be joining you both. Yes, it was a very impressive result. It was a landslide win in the city of Chester last night, a percentage lead of about 39%. It's a bigger percentage of the vote than we achieved in 1997 and the largest in the history of the seat. Now, firstly, I want to congratulate our candidate, Samantha Dixon, excellent local candidate up there in Chester, and all our team on the ground who worked so hard to deliver this result. But it's of huge national significance as well, because it sends a message to the Prime Minister and the Conservatives that in government they are now on borrowed time.
Really, because it's a by-election. I mean, congratulations anyway, obviously, but it is a by-election. And you have to concede that the government are very vulnerable at the moment to criticism after all they've been through. Maybe it's not quite the result that you're trying to make it out to be?
Well, I don't think there's any dispute that the government's conduct for some time has been truly appalling. The crashing of the economy with working people paying the price, but it's also the product not only of recent months, but of 12 years of low growth, low investment in public services and failure. I think people would struggle to name one public service that's in a better condition in 2022 than it was when the Conservatives took power in 2010. That result, though, is also about the Labour Party. It's about showing that we are ready for government. It is a large swing of 14% that would lead to a majority Labour government. But at the same time, we are not in any sense complacent. We know the work we have to do to win back the trust of the British public so that they can put a cross in the box of Labour at the next general election. And it's that very hard work that we are going to continue to do until the day that next election comes.
To pull your finger out a little bit, haven't you? We were talking to David Mellor earlier on, who said support for the Labour Party is like a puddle. It's very, very wide, but it's not very deep. I mean, and that's the problem. I don't think people don't really know what the Labour Party stands for at the moment.
Well, I'm not sure that's the case. I was knocking doors in Chester last week. I was up there to campaign for the day, and both things were coming up on the doorstep. The heavy criticism of the Conservative government, a lot of concern about the cost of living crisis, but also there was a positivity about people not just saying they were voting against the Conservatives, but they wanted to vote Labour. I think Keir Starmer has brought Labour on a tremendous journey since the disastrous defeat of 2019. We are now contenders for government. He is a leader with real seriousness of purpose, who really wants to improve our society. And we are going to continue on that journey in the months and possibly the next couple of years ahead.
We do a People's Poll every week, and in today's results, we're finding more and more people are saying they're just fed up with politicians generally and do not intend to vote come the next general election. How can you reach those people?
Well, that is a challenge that for all of us in politics should be looking to meet. And it is about trying to show that politics can make a difference, that whatever the frustrations that there are, and let's be fair, there never was a golden age when politicians were somehow trusted more than other professions. This has always been the issue. I think the British people have this healthy scepticism of politicians, and quite right too. But it is about showing at the next general election that Labour will make fairer choices and Labour will make a difference. We've set out, for example, our climate investment pledge about the green jobs of the future. We've talked about the choices we'd make. We would be, for example, abolishing the non-dom tax status on the simple principle that if you live in this country, you should pay your taxes here. And we'd be using that money to fund school breakfast clubs. We'd be using that money to fund an expansion in the NHS workforce. So it's about showing how politics can make a difference, and for us it'll be about showing that Labour will make a difference in power.
Great sort of headlines, and the non-dom thing gets sort of rattled out by your colleagues and things all the time. I mean, it's pocket change in the great scheme of things. I mean, it isn't part of the issue here, and you mentioned the cost of living crisis. You can't focus on that too much, can you? Because it's a global crisis. Now, if you try and pin that directly on the government, you've got a problem if you win, haven't you? Because how will you actually handle things any differently?
Well, firstly, the £3.2 billion we would raise from abolishing non-dom status is a significant amount of money that will make a real difference. Secondly, in relation to the international situation, the issue is that the United Kingdom is uniquely exposed. We are the only G7 economy that is still smaller than it was before the pandemic. The reason we have so many of these problems is the failure to grow the economy. The average growth rate since 2010 is 1.4%. The OECD average is 2.1%, and therein lies what we will do as a government. We will grow the economy. It's that economic growth that gives the money to spend on public services and to improve our frontline public services. And it's where this government has comprehensively failed over the past 12 years. And that's before, by the way, the disaster of the Truss Kwarteng mini budget, the unfunded tax cuts that many of your viewers will be paying the price of, not least on their mortgages, for some time to come, unfortunately.
Forgive me, but I mean, £3.2 billion from non-dom, which you're going to pay for school meals and breakfast clubs and also put in the NHS. I mean, the NHS currently has a budget of, I think, £152 billion a year, right? I mean,
yes.
An extra £1 billion or something isn't going to make any difference. Some people would look at that and say throwing more money into a pot that's already got £152 billion into it isn't going to make any difference.
Well, it will make some very specific differences. So we're talking about an extra 10,000 nursing and midwifery places. We're talking about 5,000 additional health visitors. So we can make a very significant difference, and that would be a huge expansion in our NHS workforce that would be making a difference up and down the country. And what I'd also say to your viewers this morning is that when we speak about spending money, we want value for that money. And that's why I'm being clear with you this morning, Stephen, that what that money would raise and the specific difference that it would make to improving our NHS. And my goodness, doesn't our NHS need that extra staff at the moment?
Well, look, we've got to leave it there time-wise. Thank you very much indeed for joining us this morning. Thank you. That's the Shadow Secretary of State for International Trade, Nick Thomas-Symonds.
You see, and thank you. What we say is great to get all these perspectives because we are heading into general election territory now. This is where we're heading. It's probably not going to happen for the next 2 years, but it's where we're heading, and people need to start eyeing up who you actually are believing in all of this, because we've got to be having our say before so long.
Well, Liz in Oxford's been in touch. It's a shame that in your recent poll that Reform UK wasn't included. They're going to get my vote.
There's a lot of
it's happening every day. We're hearing that more and more, aren't we?
Which would be good news for the Labour Party, because it's going to split that the right vote, isn't it? But I mean, very interesting. Keep your thoughts coming through. I think we're heading to a break, aren't we?
We are.
So we've got much more coming up. We're going to be talking to Nicholas Owen in a couple of minutes about all things royal.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel. Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other pay-per-review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week. .33, you're watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Anne. Now, brace yourselves.
Yeah, the Netflix trailer for Harry and Meghan's behind-the-scenes docuseries was released last night as his brother, the Prince of Wales, along with the Princess of Wales, are touring Boston in the United States. Now, the trailer features never-before-seen private photographs of the couple, with them saying that it's time for people to hear their side of the story.
No one sees what's happening behind the closed doors. I had to do everything I could to protect my family.
Former Royal correspondent Nicholas Owen is here. I get more and more angry every time I see it, Nicholas.
Do you?
Yeah.
Why?
Partly because they use that shot of Catherine looking stern, and so you sort of know that's where they're firing the arrows.
Yes. Well, you never know with trailers, do you? I was once told that when it comes to the big films, you know, the proper feature films, the people who make the trailers have nothing to do with the people who make the film.
Yeah, they're often different companies, aren't they?
Yeah, and so they just tell them, there it is, go and find the best shots, and that's their trade. Now, whether that's the case here, I don't know. I do remember years and years ago making a film for ITV, big television production, about after the death of Diana, Princess of Wales, Harry's mother. And we were very careful in what we said and did and what had happened, and various theories were put to the test and so on. The trailer, though, the trailer made me flinch because it sort of made it sound like we were really going to crack this story. We're going to tell you what really happened to Princess Diana and all that sort of. So you never quite know, do you? But Netflix have got a corker here, absolute corker, haven't they? I mean, the rest of us might be going, oh, dear goodness, do we have to go through this? But having paid, it is said, $100 million, about £85 million for it. They're absolutely determined to get the story out there one way and another.
Goodness, no. I mean, it's not just one documentary. It's a series of 6 documentaries. You wonder what on earth... They haven't lived long enough to be that interesting, frankly, have they?
Well, it's like pop stars and so on who produce an autobiography at the age of 21, isn't it? I don't know about you, but I find... I watch Netflix and so on, and a lot of these streamers and increasingly... conventional broadcasters, and they decide they want a series. If they're paying all that money, they want a lot for it. And sometimes they get terribly strung out. I think there'll be quite a lot of it. We all go, oh, do we really have to sit through a lot of this, you know?
Is it all about her?
Well, I think... I was telling you the story earlier, wasn't I? And I'll repeat it again. I was talking to someone who was very much involved in the Duke and Duchess of Sussex's one visit to the county in that, with that title. Very much involved in some time ago, wasn't it? A couple of years ago, was it now? And saying that when it came to the organisation of it, and then the two of them appeared and were taken round to meet people in the usual way. You know, being careful what you say to people, as we now know even more, that it was quite clear, this person who was very much involved in it said to me, the person in charge was Meghan. She was very much the one, and Harry did as he was told, basically. And I think most of us will feel that's what's going on here. I mean, she's a Hollywood person, after all. She knows the way the system works. And
this does sort of feel like the biography of a Hollywood couple, doesn't it? It's almost as though they're not royal anymore. They're attacking, or it feels like it might be potentially an attack on the royal family, and yet they're hanging on to and using their royal titles. It's an odd irony, that, isn't it? If they hate the royal family so much, why don't they just give up their titles and live as private Hollywood people?
Yes, indeed. But come on, it's a commercial world, isn't it? There's a lot of money to be made here, and there's a lot of money to be made. Also, there's a book coming, of course. That's about to drop as well. We were told that Harry was very nervous, certainly while the Queen was still alive, that his grandmother would take great offence at some of the things in it. And then when the Queen actually died, there was a lot of talk then that he wanted the book, he wanted it back, that he could make some corrections. Now, it seems there is talk that it's sort of going ahead anyway and maybe adding a bit to it. I don't know, seeing the way the wind is blowing. I keep making this point, but I think it is very important. The view of the royal family in this country, by and large, you've been doing some big opinion polls this morning, but when it comes to the royal family, you know, the popularity of the royal family is always very high up there. And yes, I did see a figure, didn't I, about those who sort of trusted Meghan and Harry or were keen on Meghan and Harry. 7%, tiny. You take those polls, you do those polls over on the other side of the Atlantic. Very different story indeed, very different story. Whether that's slick commercial packaging or whether it's because, you know, they're just an attractive young couple and a great story. You can imagine people saying, gosh, he's the Queen's grandson and all that. It's hard to tell. But that is the difference. That is the difference. The market they're operating in there, and it is a market, they are a huge brand. That's what matters to them.
OK. Nicholas, on that depressing note...
I'm sorry to be depressing. I do apologise.
Good to see you this morning. Thank you.
Good to see you.
Yeah, well, as you can imagine, that Harry and Meghan saga is all over the newspapers. We'll be looking through that in a couple of moments.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations. for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online. Across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us. We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512,
Virgin Media Channel 604,
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236,
And YouView, Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere. Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
8:43, time to go through the papers with senior reporter from the Eye, Benjamin Butterworth, and broadcaster Liz Kershaw. Good morning.
Hello.
Benjamin, quick look at the Guardian council tax.
It is. We all know we're living in a housing crisis. As a young person, I'm very aware of it. But Gwynedd, a council in North Wales, has decided that if you have a second home in that area, then you're going to have to pay 150% extra council tax. So that's double and a half what you pay on your first home, because they say 1,400 people have come to the council just this year being homeless. That's more than 1% of the total population of the area. And so they say, I'm sorry, but you can't have second homes in this beautiful area because we can't house the people that already live here.
They've always had a second home problem in Wales, though, haven't they?
They used to burn them.
Yes, that's right. They used to be activists, didn't they? It got very nasty.
But can I just tell you that most people who have a second home, most people have a majority of people have a second home, don't keep it exclusively for themselves, they rent it out for holiday makers. Well, they don't pay council tax if they're not daft, because if you make it available for letting for so many weeks a year, then you pay business rates instead, which are lower. So this won't affect the majority. The other thing I'd say is how many holiday homes are of a suitable nature to be given over to people on very low incomes.
I don't know, but the second home problem is I've always been able to see their point of view because it changes.
Yeah, I do see their point of view.
The whole shape and the whole flavour of a town or a village, doesn't it?
I don't think that's the solution, though.
But I think when you've got supply and demand, you need to disincentivise people buying lots of homes when other people can't get one.
Being charged an extra 150% is likely to do just that.
To the Mail, the winter NHS crisis, Liz.
Yeah, I'll be very quick on this. Chris Whitty and Sir Patrick Vallance have come up with a report that says, oh, surprise, surprise, that lockdowns have led to people not seeking medical treatment, and now we're going to see a whole tide of new referrals, and these people are going to have much worse conditions than they would have had been seen earlier, like stage 4 cancer instead of stage 1. So that's no surprise. The other thing is, same article, A&E chaos. It was hidden away this week in the papers. 2,000 people a month, 500 a week, are dying waiting for ambulances or waiting,
I know the ambulance situation
in
is
ambulances
terrible.
outside hospitals.
Yeah.
So even if you've got a really acute situation like a heart attack or a stroke where time is of the essence, can't
still not
deal
getting
with you.
to you.
So people are literally dying because 2,000 a month because they can't get into the hospitals.
Yeah, shocking.
Don't get ill.
No, don't get ill.
Don't get ill.
Let's cheer things up.
Yes,
sort
please.
of with a song, Benjamin.
So this is the headline in The Sun is claustrophobic, as in Santa Claus. And a pub landlord from Kent, Gary Hollidge, has revealed that he has a fear of dancing Santas. Static Santas are OK, but Gary says that it started when he was 7 years old and that he gets terrified if he sees a Santa jiggling. It makes him cry, it brings on fear. He gets into all clammy, he breaks out in a cold sweat. And he said that he's having to ban dancing Santas from coming anywhere near him.
I have total sympathy with him.
Do you?
They absolutely give me the willies too. They really do. I think they're horrid.
Is it
It's
like
something
clowns?
like clowns.
Yeah.
Yes, I've always hated clowns, and I hate balloons for the same sort of reason. But there's something about dancing Santas that's just all plain weird and horrid.
Oh.
You think I'm weird?
I think you're both crackers at that end of the table. I think they're all right. Bit of fun.
Have you got any dancing
No, I
Santas?
haven't got a dancing Santa.
I'm surprised you haven't got a big inflatable one in your garden.
They are selling those at a shop near us, I have noticed, but no. Well, because how much would it cost to keep it inflated?
Yeah. A lot.
What about the worst Christmas gifts, Liz?
Well, I know you two were talking about this earlier, and it's in the Mail, and there's lists, and you went through that. So I was just throwing in my 2 penneth. People do give you some gifts, don't they? It's not because you're avaricious, it's just that you think, oh, my goodness, you're sitting in my house, I put all this effort into it, and that's the amount of time you allocated to thinking of a gift. That's when it's insulting, isn't it? So worst ones ever for me were I got a dressing gown, and when I tried it on, there was a snotty hanky in the pocket. Used. And somebody, a male in our family, was given a tie, a Christmas tie, with Rudolph on or something, and a button you pressed, and played a tune, but it had gravy stains.
Oh, no, that really is recycling gone wrong.
And another one I got once when I opened this present, it was 3 toilet bags, all in the same fabric, in different sizes.
Oh.
It's like, why?
Why?
Well, that
Why
might
3?
come in handy.
Yeah, but why 3? Why would you need
So anyway, I think it's just better... this year I'm saying no tat, no stuff. I mean, obviously some lovely presents.
You'll allow lovely presents?
Well, I put thought into it. You put thought into your presents, don't you?
I do.
Yeah, I've had some nice ones off you, but I think experiences are nice.
I haven't bought you one this year, Liz, yeah.
No, I'm not fishing, but in the past...
Sounded like it to me.
When you had money, when you had money. And no tat, experiences, or arty, crafty, wafty stuff that's somebody's made and...
A day out in a spa, that sounds nice.
Yeah, an experience.
I do think presents that people have thought about that are for you.
Yes.
I really don't want expensive things for the sake of it. I want something that means something.
Yeah.
That's a hint as well.
Stuart in Essex says, I've bought my wife and daughter a new lawnmower for Christmas. I hope they like it.
Yeah.
That's a cut above the rest.
Oh, good one.
I'll buy you a new jumper for Christmas.
Do you remember that song?
This is new.
It's like a Neapolitan ice cream.
It is, yes.
I like it.
Yeah.
And another good one from Amanda. She says she and her husband have managed to avoid arguments on Christmas Day by not buying presents. They have a lovely Christmas day, but they avoid the minefield of Christmas presents by simply either not buying any or purchasing something that they both would like.
Oh, that's a bit
together.
But that's because he gave her a ring-bound shorthand notepad in 1982, and she'd already given up shorthand as she hated it.
Yeah, she obviously hasn't forgotten it.
I think it's nice to have a little something to open, don't you?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. On that note, we're going to leave you two. Thank you both very much indeed for being here this morning.
And looking forward to winter and Christmas, thousands of people in communities up and down the UK are using warm banks, or warmth banks, I've heard them called, set up by councils to support people through these high energy prices and the cost of living. So they've got somewhere warm to go.
In Sandwell in the West Midlands, more than 4,000 people have already inquired about the spaces since the scheme started a few weeks ago.
Well, our West Midlands reporter Jack Carson is outside one of these warm spaces to tell us more. Hello there, Jack. You look well wrapped up for the cold. Is there anyone taking use of that warm space yet?
Well, it's just about to open here in Sandwell. As you mentioned, 4,000 people just over the last few weeks have inquired on their website about this space, and they're opening all across the country. Some more opened in North Devon yesterday, some more in Derbyshire today as well. So they're still opening, and they're a place for people primarily to go and, like you said, keep warm. But they've also got a second purpose as well. 8.2 million people, according to warmspaces.org, are estimated to be in energy and fuel poverty this winter already. So these are a space for people to go and keep warm during the daytime, during the weekends as well. They're in libraries, they're in community centres like the one you can see behind me, and also leisure centres as well. And I spoke to the leader of Sandwell Council, Councillor Kerry Carmichael, yesterday to find out a bit more about why these spaces are important.
Well, it was really important for our residents. We know many of our residents suffer from deprivation, so it was important they had somewhere warm to go in the daytime and the evening. It took a lot of work from our officers internally to actually sort all this out. I mean, we have 19 libraries and also our leisure centres that are all running as warm spaces, and we've included the voluntary sector and other organisations into this scheme. So it's took a lot of work from everyone involved.
And in terms of demand that you've had for them, what's that been like as people kind of are struggling to heat their own homes?
We've had around 10,000 people coming into the libraries weekly just to use our warm spaces, so there is a great demand. And also our fellow councillors from all wards have realised that, you know, demand is great, and also asking for bigger opening, better opening hours as well.
In terms of what people can be offered, it's not just obviously a warm space, there's also advice and all kinds of things that people can get while they're here.
Yeah. There's signposting, there's cups of teas, there's hot drinks, there's informal chats with anyone. Obviously, we like the fact that people can come in and just generally talk to other community members about what's happening in the area. We've had knit and natter classes, you know, and different things that the libraries are putting on for the residents.
So that was Kerry Carmichael, the leader of Sandwell Council, who's set up over 60 warm spaces here in this council area. One particular thing I thought was actually poignant from what she mentioned there was that it's not just a warm space, it's also an area to go and get advice and learn what support you can get from the council. But also 1.5 million people are estimated to be, old people are estimated to be lonely this Christmas. So a part of these warm spaces is also about providing companionship this Christmas.
Yeah, OK. Jack, thanks very much indeed on that. It sounds like a positive note. Talking about staying positive, Pash says, I'm 68 and still working. Stepped down from management at B&Q and went from 39 hours to 12 hours on the shop floor, and I absolutely love it.
Yeah.
Keep your thoughts coming through. GB Views at gbnews.uk. Top stories coming up.
Hello, a very good morning to you. It's Aidan McGivern here from the Met Office. Foggy for many of us once again this morning, but brighter skies are on their way later. Unlike yesterday when the fog didn't clear in places, today the fog will lift because what's happening is the isobars across the map are now tightening up around the periphery of a large area of high pressure to the east, and that will bring an increased easterly breeze through the day. So that's going to make it feel colder through the next few days, but it will also help to lift the mist and fog that we've got around first thing. So after poor visibility on the roads during the morning, the fog does lift by the afternoon. The easterly breeze is still bringing a fair amount of cloud in. I don't think there'll be much sunshine, but there will be some sun coming through Northern Ireland, West Wales, Cornwall, as well as parts of North East England. There'll also be some showers into the east coast of England, but it will feel cold with the wind, 5 to 9 Celsius, and when you add on the wind, well, you can take off a few degrees for the wind chill effect. A lot of cloud for Scotland and some patchy rain clearing the far north of Scotland, but otherwise it's mostly a dry picture. And for many places, it's a fine end to the week. There'll be no fog forming on Friday night, but there will be a lot of cloud feeding in and further showers into eastern and central areas. Clear spells to the west will lead to a touch of frost in places first thing Saturday, but the frost won't be widespread because of the extent of the cloud and because of that breeze helping to stir things up. It will be particularly gusty along the English Channel coast as well as the North Sea coast, and both these areas will feel cold because of the wind direction. The wind will also bring in further showers into the east, and also there'll be a spell of more persistent light rain affecting the northwest of Scotland. It'll be mild in the far northwest of Scotland, 9 to 10 degrees here. Elsewhere, 7 degrees typically across the UK. And when you add on the wind, it'll feel more like 4 or 5 degrees on Saturday and feeling more like 0 to 3 degrees on Sunday as that wind picks up and we get even colder air. But at this stage, any showers will be composed of rain.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Deebs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes & Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes & Kerr.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by 2 of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
As a guy who went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Labour has won the Chester by-election in the first public vote since Boris Johnson and Liz Truss left number 10.
Good morning, 9 o'clock, Friday the 2nd of December. This is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Anne. These are your top stories today.
As I was saying, Labour's won Chester, the by-election there, delivering a major blow to Rishi Sunak in his first electoral test as Prime Minister. The winner is Samantha Dixon, who has now retained that seat for Labour. She said it sent a clear message to the government.
From your opinion on the PM to who you would vote for in the next general election, we'll bring you the latest results from the GB News People's Poll.
And as Meghan and Harry released the trailer for their much-anticipated Netflix documentary series, we're in Boston as William and Catherine visit locals and attempt to put the recent race storm behind them.
And as always, we'd love to hear from you. Get in touch, join in the conversation. gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Well, there you have it. Overnight, we've heard Labour has won the City of Chester by-election. Samantha Dixon won the seat. She's retained the seat for Labour. She described the City of Chester as a bellwether constituency.
Well, of course, it's a blow for Rishi Sunak. It's his first electoral test since becoming Prime Minister. Our North West of England reporter Sophie Reaper has been finding out more.
Yesterday, the people of Chester took to the polls in order to select a new MP, and it was Labour candidate Samantha Dixon who was celebrating in the early hours of the morning. Now, it's worth saying that the reason behind this by-election is because former Labour MP Christian Matheson was forced to step down after allegations of serious sexual misconduct. Now, the result here in Chester doesn't come as much of a surprise given the last few months in politics, but what has come as a surprise is that the Tories have suffered their worst defeat here since 1832. Labour candidate Sam Dixon took over 17,000 votes, that's 61%. She also took almost 11,000 votes more than the Conservative candidate. Now, I was here in the constituency yesterday speaking to voters, and they told me, the majority of them anyway, that they were planning on voting for Labour. So the result didn't really come as much of a surprise. But what they did tell me was what they were concerned about were the issues facing Chester. Here's some of what they had to tell me.
I'd like to see the town a lot cleaner than it is, and also there are too many empty shops and they need to be filled.
Immigration. What about immigration?
I don't want any more coming into this country.
And why not?
Because we can't afford to feed our own, never mind the immigrants.
To improve the environment, to unfortunately reduce the dependency on motor cars.
They've got to ensure that rents and rates are right for the town, because it's a leisure and commercial centre. So those have got to be sorted out so that the shops are filled. There are too many voids in this town.
Well, there's so much that needs doing, but I don't think they'll bother doing it because one party's the same as the other. We're not being levelled up here at all. It's just words levelling up. They don't carry out what they say they're going to do. They just talk the talk, they don't walk the walk.
Well, as we've just heard, there's plenty for the new Labour MP in Chester to be getting on with, Sam Dixon. But I'm sure, given the circumstances, she'll just be pleased, and the Labour Party as a whole will just be pleased that they've managed to retain this crucial seat here in the constituency of Chester.
So, from Chester to the national picture now. Time for the GB News People's Poll.
So what have people been saying? Well, on Rishi Sunak, 43% in the poll hold an unfavourable view of the Prime Minister.
When asked who you would vote for in the next general election, and this is the big one really, state of the parties, 46% said they would vote for Labour, 21% say the Tories, a huge gap.
But it's also very interestingly, when they were asked whether they'll vote in the next general election at all, 54% say they are going to vote, but 12% say emphatically they won't.
Well, let's talk to our political correspondent, Tom Harwood, who's here. Morning, Tom.
Morning.
State of the parties. We were told, weren't we, that a new Prime Minister in place, that would start to narrow. Well, not yet, really.
We haven't seen much of a Rishi bounce. This was the big promise of Rishi Sunak becoming Prime Minister, turning around those dire poll positions that the Tories found themselves in under Liz Truss. Yet, whilst certainly there have been some benefits in terms of what the market reaction has been, there's been some stabilisation. The value of the pound has risen a bit, although to be fair, the value of the dollar has fallen, so that may well have played into that more so. In terms of where public opinion is, 21% for the Conservatives is about where they were getting under the former Prime Minister. And so Conservative MPs will be looking at this result and thinking, gosh, where are we now? Ultimately, Boris Johnson was removed as Prime Minister when the Tory party was around 5 points behind in the polls, and now the Tory party is around 20 points behind in the polls. It does seem like things aren't getting better, and that's reflected again in this by-election result in Chester today. It's about where the polls would have expected. No big surprises, really. A 14-point swing against the Conservatives in the favour of the Labour Party. Now, that would give the Labour Party a majority at the next election. Not a Tony Blair-style majority, but a majority.
You wonder why the Number 10 aren't coming out with, I don't know, just something more positive, a few more positive messages that might make devoted Tory voters want to stay with them. But at the moment, they're just not doing that. They're not courting anyone. It's almost as though they don't care at the moment.
It does seem a bit doom and gloom, really, from Number 10 and particularly Number 11. We've got the highest tax burden that this country has ever seen on record. We've, of course, got the promise of some spending cuts to come. And when it comes to that promise of supply-side reform, of repealing EU regulation, of doing all of the things that perhaps Liz Truss was promising to do in her boosterish attitude, although perhaps was doing so too quickly, there isn't that sort of hope of jam tomorrow for Conservative voters.
But is that strategy? Because I know Anne, wants to see some positive messages. I wonder if there's a deliberate strategy here to say, we're going in hard, we'll start producing positive messages in 12 months.
Well, there is a potential for that, of course. There is a budget that will come next year. This was, of course, an autumn statement that we saw from the Chancellor. That had a lot of doom and gloom, not much joy at all in that. But in the new year, we are expecting a budget, a more fully fledged fiscal event where there may well be some more retail offers for people there. But ultimately, I think less about the particular policy. What matters more is the mood music and where things are. The Labour Party have played a very canny game here in terms of speaking to the sort of issues that median voters, particularly red wall voters, wants to be hearing about. Of course, last week, the Labour Party leader was talking about the need to control migration. That's something we haven't heard from the Labour Party in a long time.
He spent the whole Prime Minister's questions on it, didn't he?
He certainly did, and we can argue about the detail of Labour policy, whether it would actually change things or not, but the fact that they're talking about it almost is more important, because that's what people sort of get a sense that perhaps this is a party that is less out of touch than it used to be. And that seems to be the method that the Labour Party spin doctors are planning for the next year at least, trying to become at least not unthinkable as an option. They too will have to do some more in terms of retail policy. Trying to think of the differences between Labour Party policy and Tory Party policy right now is very difficult. I think I could count on about one hand the big differences between the two parties right now, and that may well be
but what Keir Starmer is doing, that Rishi Sunak doesn't seem to be fighting back at, is he's calling him weak, weak, weak. He's getting that label around him, isn't he?
That's certainly the case. We've seen this now for 3 Prime Minister's questions in a row. The Labour Party has found their their new attack line on Rishi Sunak. They say that he's pushed around by backbenchers in his party, pushed around by vested interests. The Prime Minister yesterday, interestingly, in a way that could be interpreted as trying to fight back against this label, has been trying to think of ways to become more tough. And this round table that was hosted yesterday in Downing Street with police chiefs on how to deal with unusual guerrilla protest tactics. In plain English, this is Rishi Sunak wanting to crack down on the Extinction Rebellion, Just Stop Oil kind of people. We might well see police getting a bit more tough there, and that might be one of Rishi Sunak's routes in terms of saying, I am actually a bit more of a tough guy than I've been given credit for.
OK. Tom, for now, thanks very much indeed.
Be interesting to see that. I think everybody would welcome some action on that front.
I think they would. 10 minutes past 9, let's bring you up to date with some of the other stories today. And the average premium that customers paid for private motor insurance in the last 4 months was 2% higher than last year, all down to repairs costing more. The Association of British Insurers says motorists typically paid £436 if you're getting your insurance in the third quarter, a 3% increase compared to earlier on in the year.
Cornwall is to benefit from a £360 million devolution deal under new government plans. The proposed deal, which will require local consent and parliamentary approval, would give the county a locally elected mayor and a greater say over transport budgets, building and several other areas. The government's calling the deal a landmark settlement.
And Sir Elton John has been announced as the first headline act for Glastonbury next year. He said he couldn't be more excited, and there is no more fitting way to say goodbye to my British fans. It's going to be the final UK show of Elton's last tour, or latest last tour.
He's a bit like Sinatra. He keeps coming round again to say goodbye, doesn't he?
Stop.
Never really want to say him to say. I thought of the name of that Cornish MP.
Oh, yes.
About 3 hours ago, I mentioned whenever I see Cornwall, talk about Cornwall, I always thought of him. He was a lovely MP. He was Liberal MP for Truro at the time, David Penhaligon. Did you ever meet him?
David Penhaligon?
He was
no,
absolutely lovely, lovely man. Sadly died early. I can't remember what of, but he was a great loss when we lost him because he was a lovely... Liberal, but he was a sort of lovely voice. You know what? No, I'm not saying he was a Liberal voice. He was a lovely, medium, soft voice on all sorts of things, and much missed. Really nice man.
Now, something which you may actively want to miss is the Netflix trailer for Harry and Meghan's behind-the-scenes docu-series. It was released last night as the Prince of Wales tours the US city of Boston. The trailer has never-before-seen ultimate, very private pictures of the couple, which they now want to share. They say it's time for people to hear their side of the story.
No one sees what's happening behind closed doors. I had to do everything I could to protect my family.
Oh, pass the bucket.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Let's see what Royal biographer Andrew Lowney makes of it all. Morning.
Good morning.
Well, I mean, honestly, what do you think?
Well, I think it's just a new level of attacks on the royal family. I think it's really sad. Of course, this is going to play well in America, which is what it's meant to do. And I think the sad thing is we now have two different narratives. Their narrative, which seems to be approved by the Americans, and the reality. And I feel very sorry for the royal family because there's very little they can do to respond to this.
Well, exactly. I mean, it's always been the case that the royal family doesn't respond to this sort of thing. The trouble with not responding in any way is that they are letting Harry and Meghan set the narrative. And the narrative is becoming weirder and more horrible, isn't it? The narrative is that the royal family is racist.
Yes, but I mean, you know, we had your reaction, we've had the reaction of the papers today. Everyone can see through this.
Well, we can in this country, but not maybe in the States.
Well, there's nothing we can do about what goes on in the States, but I think people are beginning to rumble them, and, you know, their so-called pleas for privacy and things. They're basically manipulating their position for their own personal gain. I think this is a very serious moment for the monarchy, actually. I think, you know, far more than Andrew or anything else, these are the people that are likely to really damage it.
Bob's been in touch. Morning, Bob. He says, I think Shakespeare would be proud. Meghan's behaving like Lady Macbeth. And do you know what? I see where he's coming from.
She's a very nasty piece of work, I'm afraid, and people recognise this very early on, but he's obsessed with her, and there's nothing much you can do.
Yes, that's interesting. In Giles Brandreth's recent book about the Queen, he said the Queen, apparently, her opinion was that Harry was rather too much in love with Meghan. That was the Queen's way of putting it. You might well interpret that as being almost obsessed.
Yes, he is. You know, he's clearly a very damaged young man, and she's been able to capitalise on that. You know, and I think it's very interesting to see the route the two brothers have taken under very different marriages. And I think it's a human tragedy, but of course it has huge consequences for this country.
In what sense do you think? Because I wonder if this is going to do nothing, I mean, on our shores, do nothing but solidify support for the royal family, actually.
Well, no, because as you say, the narrative is shaped. People begin to believe these things. That we already have a rather distorted narrative from the Crown. And I'm afraid people do believe these things. You know, we have clearly the issue with Lady Susan Hussey, which in my view was unfortunate, but is a storm in a teacup, but has been milked for all it's worth by the press and indeed by Miss Fulani. So, you know, they can't win. You know, everyone's got the knives out for them at the moment.
I don't understand it. Why? Why would they have the knives out?
Well, you know, that's a very big question, but you know, they seem to be vulnerable with the succession. You know, there are clearly people who resent Charles because of Diana. There are people who clearly see this as an opportunity to get back at the royal family. And we have this vicious personal vendetta, really, coming from Harry. And, you know, the press clearly have to report these things. But, of course, this is just giving it the oxygen of publicity.
Yeah, no, fair point. Andrew, good to see you this morning. Thanks very much indeed.
Very sad,
it's depressing, isn't it?
It is incredibly sad. And you've said that you won't watch it.
I won't watch it.
I will watch it because I just have to know. It's a mixture of, you know, I suppose, journalistic curiosity and, I don't know, just wanting to see what they say. But I cannot understand what they're going to say that's going to be so interesting that it's going to last 6 episodes.
I can't watch things where I have to shout at the television. It's not good for my soul.
No, it's not good. It's not good for your heart.
So I won't be watching it. Anyway, look, much more still to come for you, including decorating your Christmas tree with some inclusive decorations. We'll tell you more after this.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel. Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh my goodness, brilliant. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know. The latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Christmas, yes. We're talking about inclusive Christmas decorations. And the designers and owners of the company that make these have been talking about the impact they're making in championing diversity as educational and inspiring.
Yeah, we're joined in the studio this morning by Alison Burton and Natalie Duval. They're founders of a company called March Muses. And it's all about... Well, I know, I'm not going to say it. I'm going to ask you to say it.
Yes.
Tell us what it's all about.
It's about diversity. It's about decorations that are brown for a very long time. Christmas especially has been whitewashed.
Yeah.
And it was my daughter who asked me, could angels have brown skin? And I said, of course they can have brown skin, but she'd never seen an angel in media, in person, with brown skin. And so we went on a mission to find some. Couldn't find any in the country, so we decided to make some.
Which is fair enough.
Well, it's astonishing when you think about it.
It hasn't been done before.
Exactly. We basically identified a glaring gap in the market. And then rather than atting some of the larger retailers, we decided we'll just create our own range. And we launched in 2019 with just 6 products. And we've gone from strength to strength since then.
What's the March business? Why is it important to
well, Alison and I are both born in March, and Muse is to be inspired by, and our collection is inspired by our children. And we just wanted a name that, just didn't pigeonhole us.
Yeah.
So we can do almost anything with that. Yes, we are a business. Yes, we are a black business, but we are also much more than that.
Yes, yes. You're not over-egging the pudding, as it were.
Exactly.
But they
what
are
always
beautiful.
strikes me is that, because there will be some people, and and you must have heard it, say, why would you do this?
Why? How dare you? Angels are supposed to be white.
Well, exactly.
Yeah, whoever said?
Well, no, but the point is, when you talk about Christmas and the birth of Christ, Jesus was not a white person. He was,
So glad he said that.
But that's exactly right, isn't it? So why there shouldn't be a
and
whitewash?
also, these figures, you can depict them in any way you wish.
Yeah.
Because we've never seen an angel.
No,
I'm not sure about anyone else, but I've not seen an angel yet.
I've seen a footballer, though.
Yeah.
I'm dangling that footballer on my Christmas tree because he's done well, hasn't he?
Exactly. He is a beaut.
Whoever he might be. I think that's a lovely one.
Yeah.
And it's important not just to show fairies and angels, I suppose, but to appeal to the boys.
I've got to say, there's something about a black Santa which is... You can imagine, actually, particularly for young black kids, it's really important.
Oh, exactly. I mean, we're not expecting our children to grow up and want to be Santa, but it's about representation. Just like when Black Panther came out, we're not expecting them to grow up and want to be a superhero, but we want them to... Well, they could be, but we want them to know that they are represented in this world, and that's exactly what it is. And also, our children said, well, how do you know what colour Santa is? You're sleeping when he arrives. Yes, you are.
Very good point.
Yes, you are.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have to say, this little one...
He's cool, right?
I
like
it.
I like
He's
it.
actually one of our first Santas, and he still remains the most popular one.
You've got a little choir boy there.
So we have a little choir boy. Yes, we do.
I just think they're so
when you look at them, you think, Why wasn't this done before?
They are angelic, as they're supposed to be.
We always call ourselves the Uber of Christmas decorations, because Uber came around, you didn't realise you needed Uber until it was here.
No.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what this is. You didn't realise you needed it until it is here. And, you know, in a world, obviously, with all the news that's been going on recently, especially with race, these decorations are more important than ever, especially in this country.
Now, tell me about this one.
Oh.
So this one is our classic Dutch pot. You can buy it individually, or it comes in a set of 3 with other items. But a Dutch pot is a staple in any cultural kitchen. So we cook curries in there, oxtail, stewed chicken, all sorts.
So that really means something.
So it means a lot.
Yeah, house is not
one
home
for the
without
culture.
a Dutch pot.
Right. I mean, what I like is the fact that, I mean, anyone can get one of it. It doesn't just, you know, you haven't necessarily got a niche market for this, have you? This is for anyone can put these up on their tree.
If you celebrate Christmas, there's something for you. We always talk about tradition, and we always talk about there's room for everyone on the tree. And we're not saying that you need to put a Christmas tree and just have black decorations. We're not saying that at all. It's tradition. You buy a new decoration, why not buy a choir boy? Why not buy a footballer? Why not buy...
But you know, I think they make a lovely present for
Yeah,
whoever.
they do.
For
and
any
that's what
family,
we find,
wouldn't
like, our customer base is so diverse because, number one, they're repeat customers. They come back and buy more when we get new products, and they send them as gifts to friends, family, colleagues.
So where do we get them from?
So
Very
you
quickly,
can purchase them on our website, marchmuses.co.uk. We're also stocked in Selfridges and Liberty London.
Oh, my dear.
Right, there you go.
That's only the best.
Natalie, Alison, really good to see you this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Well done.
Very much.
Brilliant.
Thank you, Father Christmas, for coming in. That's it from us. Tom Harwood's here next.
Hello, a very good morning to you. It's Aidan McGivern here from the Met Office. Foggy for many of us once again this morning, but brighter skies are on their way later. Unlike yesterday when the fog didn't clear in places, today the fog will lift because what's happening is the isobars across the map are now tightening up around the periphery of a large area of high pressure to the east, and that will bring an increased easterly breeze through the day. So that's going to make it feel colder through the next few days, but it will also help to lift the mist and fog that we've got around first thing. So after poor visibility on the roads during the morning, the fog does lift by the afternoon. The easterly breeze is still bringing a fair amount of cloud in. I don't think there'll be much sunshine, but there will be some sun coming through Northern Ireland, West Wales, Cornwall, as well as parts of North East England. There'll also be some showers into the east coast of England, but it will feel cold with the wind, 5 to 9 Celsius. And when you add on the wind, well, you can take off a few degrees for the wind chill effect. A lot of cloud for Scotland and some patchy rain clearing the far north of Scotland, but otherwise it's mostly a dry picture. And for many places, it's a fine end to the week. There'll be no fog forming on Friday night, but there will be a lot of cloud feeding in and further showers into eastern and central areas. Clear spells to the west will lead to a touch of frost in places first thing Saturday, but the frost won't be widespread because of the extent of the cloud and because of that breeze helping to stir things up. It will be particularly gusty along the English Channel coast as well as the North Sea coast, and both these areas will feel cold because of the wind direction. The wind will also bring in further showers into the east, and also there'll be a spell of more persistent light rain affecting the northwest of Scotland. It'll be mild in the far northwest of Scotland, 9 to 10 degrees here. Elsewhere, 7 degrees typically across the UK. And when you add on the wind, it'll feel more like 4 or 5 degrees on Saturday and feeling more like 0 to 3 degrees on Sunday as that wind picks up and we get even colder air. But at this stage, any showers will be composed of rain.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you know, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons? I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.